Thud, thud, thud. Feels like some ghost smithy is hammering away. Right inside my skull. I bolted wide awake. Unfamiliar wooden ceiling. Unfamiliar, wrinkled old face barely 2 inches from mine. My lord, the heavens have smiled upon us. You're awake. Sweet, sweet, sweet. Except I have absolutely no clue who this old-timer is. Suddenly, a flood of memories smashed into me like a freight train, packed to the brim with someone else's cringe life choices. Ive transmigrated. I'm Richard Schwein now, the sole remaining heir of the Schwein noble house. A spineless drunkard. A completely pathetic excuse for a barren son. The original guy's dad was basically a hard-ass drill sergeant who brought his kid up through daily ass-kickings and crack-of-dawn training drills. The outcome? A dude who smiled and played along on the outside, while being a total emotional train wreck on the inside. Father of the Year meets Son of the Decade. And both those trophies are just for showing up. I sat up, and the hangover nearly took me out right then and there. My finger had a thick bowstring callus. Years of archery practice hardwired into this flesh. Well, at least the previous guy wasn't completely worthless. Just about 97% useless. How's the fortress holding up? The aging butler, Edwin, began shaking as he spilled the news. Orc raiders breached the Frostwhisper Mountains, tearing through the northern village. My father, the old baron, commanded 30 guards in a final defensive stand so the peasants could flee into the castle. And me? Where was the valiant young heir during this chaos? Blacked out, wasted down in the wine cellar. Got knocked clean out by a tumbling cask. My old man perished, slaying orcs, his chest hacked wide open by a battle axe, while I was busy getting a concussion from booze. The irony of it all is so thick you could carve it. I glanced out the window. The inner courtyard was crammed with refugees, with women shredding their own skirts to make bandages, children weeping in their mother's embrace, maimed veteran soldiers propped against the walls, staring blankly. They witnessed my father's death and stood by completely helpless. Truly uplifting stuff. Then, ding, a see-through interface materialized right before my eyes. War system online. Dinars, 500. Units available for hire. Military roster. Wait a minute, hold on. Is this Mount and Blade? I actually got a gaming system. My profile popped up, level 1. Strength, 12. Agility, 10. Charisma, 8. Perks, locked. Fiefdom, Schwein Castle. Status, dilapidated. Yeah, no kidding, it's a total dump. I could have figured that out without a magical display. My lord. Are you okay? Assemble anyone capable of wielding a blade. To the Grand Hall now. I dragged myself over to the main room and instantly regretted getting my hopes up. 12 sentries, standing there like scarecrows having a midlife crisis. A handful of peasants, gripping corroded pitchforks with soil, still caked beneath their nails. And over in the corner, 3 adolescents. The littlest one was sniffling, wiping his nose on his sleeve, while clutching a bundle of spears. This is my grand army? This is what's supposed to block the orc invasion? We're dead meat. Line up, you spineless cowards. A booming shout rattled the dust loose from the roof rafters. Stomping out came a massive, one-eyed colossus in iron boots. He grabbed the sniffling kid, hoisted him into the air, unheeded a blade from his own belt, and jammed it into the lad's palms. Hold it tight. Imagine it's the underwear strap of the barkeep's wife. The entire room erupted into laughter, even the folks who seemed ready to draft their final testaments just moments ago. My interface blinked. Hero unit identified. Captain of the Guard, Galvin, Iron Anvil. Ability, Battle Cry. Morale boosted by 20%. Army status improved from Shattered to Rattled, Edwin. Gossip that my old man tracked down this psycho in a place called Blood Gorge and bought his loyalty with half the fortress's dwarf. Whiskey reserves, money damn well spent, honestly. Galvin dropped down on one knee right before me, his steel gauntlet slamming against his chest piece, like a ringing cathedral bell. Bam! His single, bloodshot eye glowed like magma in the firelight. Tell me what's pumping through your veins right now. Booze or blood? Every single pair of eyes in the hall locked onto me. Enough blood to paint the Frostwhisper Mountains crimson. The one-eyed maniac flashed a grin, showing nothing but fangs, and whipped around to face the crowd. You hear that, maggots? Tonight, we're using those orc bastards for wall mortar. I ordered everyone to get some rest, and pulled Edwin to the side. How much silver is left in the vaults? Around 300, my lord. But those orcs won't care about a ransom. They're only after blood and ash. Bring me every coin. Instantly, the system exchanged the funds into 300 dinars, plus my initial 500, giving me a grand total of 800. Weapon specialization options flashed ahead. Swords, bows, polearms. Bows. Didn't even have to think twice. This was always my meta build back in Mount and Blade. You just don't mess with the classics. Next, I went on a shopping spree. 20 Imperial recruits for 400 dinars. And 5 citizen cavalry for 500 dinars. Remaining balance? Negative 100. Yep, I'm officially broke. I've been a noble ruler for maybe 4 hours total. And I'm already drowning in debt. Just fantastic. Truly a natural-born commander of men and money, my lord. There's movement outside the gates. I sprinted up to the ramparts, and sure enough, there they stood. 20 spearmen holding a tight formation by the entrance, with 5 light cavalrymen idling close by. Every single one had a little green icon, hovering above their heads, that only I could spot. Edwin looked like he was having a straight-up spiritual awakening. By the heavens, where on earth did these soldiers come from? Just old allies of the Shuayin clan? I smirked. For the very first time since waking up in this realm. Throw open the gates and welcome our backups. Edwin was far too occupied making holy signs across his chest to ask any further questions. Right at midnight, we quietly slipped out the side entrance. The system provided me with a top-down tactical layout. I could spot everything. The main orc force was gathered around their bonfire in the middle of the western village side. Only a pair of sentries were watching over the cages. Packed with captured locals, just 2 guards. I possessed a fancy heirloom bow with a 25% range boost, along with a brand new aim assist feature wired into my eyes. Those orcs never stood a prayer. I unholstered the Shuai hunting bow. A faint, glowing targeting reticle materialized in my vision. The crosshair locked onto the first orc skull, and I let fly. The arrow arched mid-air as if guided by built-in GPS, slamming directly into the orc's eye socket. The second watchman barely even reacted, before arrow number 2 was already deeply embedded in his throat. Double kill. Archery proficiency reached level 10, unlocking the quick knock. Passive skill. No way. Some scarred, veteran soldier grumbled. Galvin cut in right away. Did you rookies catch that? That right there is the fabled Shuaiying. Falling star archery style. He completely made that up on the spot without a single hitch. The guy's a total hype machine, and I love it. Galvin, grab the guards and liberate the villagers. Once the panic erupts, the rest of you fall in with me. I had pinpointed the orc ration stockpile on my tactical map. Phase 1, arson. Phase 2, rescue. Phase 3, prey. The very instant the torch hit the grain pile, I issued the attack command straight through the system. The night sky ignited in orange. Orcs were scrambling around, shrieking. Pure, beautiful mayhem. My 20 green recruits pushed forward in a tight shield wall, their wooden shields bristling with spears. Looking exactly like an aggressive hedgehog learning how to walk. Slow, awkward, but getting it done, orcs rushed the front lines. The leader took an arrow straight to the throat from 50 paces out. Yep, that was me, my bowstring still humming. Kill number 3, kill number 4. The UI just kept feeding me wind speed corrections and range adjustments, acting like a handy little ballistics calculator, installed right in my brain. One shot, literally bent around a shield to catch an orc in the eye. Physics left the chat. Hey, I'm not complaining. Suddenly, a massive orc wielding a war hammer sent one of my recruits flying, shield and everything. The system flagged him as an elite berserker. I pulled the bow back to full draw. The trembling hunting bow thrummed. The berserker threw his head back, letting out a roar. Bad call. Open wide. Eat arrow. Critical hit. Archery proficiency 15. Right flank cavalry charge. 5 riders. Sliced through the orc ranks like a hot knife. Through green, pissed off butter. Spears flashing in the firelight, moving in a flawless V formation. The surviving orcs broke ranks and scattered as the final one collapsed. Silence slammed into the battlefield like a concrete wall. Every single soldier was staring right at me as I stood on that small ridge, weapon in hand, looking like I actually had a clue what I was doing. Which, props to the system, I kinda did. Secure the battlefield. I ordered, keeping my voice completely level. Find any surviving orcs. I want answers on why they raided the North Village. Meanwhile, inside my head, the victory screen was popping off. 32 orcs slain, 16 of my own dead, 10 injured, plus 320 XP, 160 dinars, 150 troop XP, and 50 sacks of grain. Quest complete, defend the homeland. Bonus, a 200 XP, 500 dinars. Leveled up to level 2. 2 units ready for promotion. I went from being wasted in a wine cellar to a literal war commander in a single day. That account is fully settled. My troops are staring at me like I'm some legendary god of war, rather than a guy who was totally passed out beneath a cask just this morning. Not a bad start for my first day in an alternate reality. Not bad at all. The dawn's rays struck the fortress walls, giving them an almost beautiful appearance. Well, almost. It was like throwing makeup on a decaying ruin. As I stood atop the ramparts, brushing my hands against the freezing masonry, the truth of it all finally hit me. This is definitely no hallucination. I'm completely trapped in this high fantasy realm, with a horde of orcs hunting me down. Right on cue, my system popped up a daily earnings statement, operating like a bizarre piece of fantasy ledger software. Food output is 40 units daily. Tax revenue sits at 85 dinars. Trade brings in 32 dinars. However, the bazaar is 40% demolished, so that metric is essentially tanking. Total daily income, 117 dinars. Edwin dragged himself up behind me, clutching a parchment, sporting bloodshot eyes and trembling hands, radiating that entire "we're completely doomed" vibe. My lord, here is the casualty assessment. Perhaps it's time to send a request for backup to the capital. I grabbed the document, which the system immediately scanned and converted because apparently my mind functions as a digital reader now. Down in the courtyard, the mounted troops still had blood-stained arrows protruding from their gear. New recruits were clumsily assisting the village women with moving the casualties, and everyone kept casting nervous glances at the dead orcs that remained strung up along the fortifications, serving as the grimmest decorations imaginable. Dispatch a message for aid, I instructed Edwin, but any relief forces from the capital won't make it here for at least a fortnight. Gazing out toward the Frost Whisper Peaks, I added, let's just pray we survive until they do. Man, what a wonderfully motivating pep talk, Richard. The saved locals began streaming into the inner keep. My system flagged 47 refugees and 12 fit workers. Most of them looked like walking ghosts in tatters. Moms holding babies, kids with blank, traumatized stares. It's the kind of sight that really hits you hard, even for a transmigrated guy who just got here yesterday. Grab every blanket in the storehouse, I ordered Edwin. Get hot water and porridge from the kitchen. His face twisted like he was about to protest. But our rations. Yet he shut up and did it. Being a lord has precisely one silver lining so far. People actually do what you tell them to. I pulled up the system's map. North Village is totally wiped out, West Crop's ruined. This castle is holding together on pure hope and gravity. Just 7 days of food remaining. Just 1 week. My lord. Galvin's shout was loud enough to break glass. You got to see this out in the yard. 3 riders were hauling in a bound orc. This particular one was missing its left ear, which was decked out with 3 bronze hoops. Apparently the height of orc fashion, even tied up tight like a holiday ham. It was thrashing around and snarling. Nabbed him lagging behind the main retreat. Busted leg kept him from keeping pace. I stared down at the deep, bloody gash on its right thigh. Man, that is a brutal limp. Galvin barked a question in Orcish, which, honestly, sounds like someone gargling rocks while pissed off. The orc quit squirming and locked eyes with me, flashing a nasty grin full of jagged, rotten fangs. Kalvash koshak gomak zug mograt shofak. Translate. Galvin's expression darkened instantly. He says the fury of the blood. Scar will incinerate this cozy nest. Also, Chief Gruul intends to use your skull as a cup. Come a full moon in 3 days. 3 damn days. Some warlord, named Grul, is eager to drink from my skull. No biggie, we're totally fine. I sent riders out to scout, and gave orders to keep the orcs cell-locked, with proper medical care. I seriously need intel from that ugly bastard, and croaked prisoners can't talk. Midday. The castle hall is absolutely jam-packed. I took my seat on the throne while the system logged a live transcription of everyone whining. Talk about the world's most depressing meeting log. The crops are ruined. An elderly farmer croaks, his face wrinkled like parched earth. We won't make it a harvest. My smithy requires coal. The soot-covered blacksmith adds, coughing between words. Mend the fortifications first. Galvin bashed the masonry so hard that debris cascaded down. Seriously, this guy's fix for everything is just assaulting the architecture. I held up my hand. Instanquier. The interface had already organized the chaos into a neat priority checklist. Urgent objectif. Post-war rebuilding and food provisions. 7 days left. Fortifications at 65%. Armaments are 42% degraded. Listen up, my voice echoed through the room. Rations are sorted. Refugees from the North Village will relocate to the castle's northern sector. Edwin is managing the billets. I shifted my gaze to the smith. The forge gets mended first. Take 5 burly laborers. I expect that chimney smoking by tomorrow morning. Understood, sire. Nightfall. I patrolled the battlements alone. Confident stats. hovered right above each sentry's head, like pathetic little loading graphics. Hey, at least they're up from yesterday. Honey alcohol perk, +5 confidence. Cheers to booze, settling crises in every single reality. I spotted a breached wall down on the southeastern side. Out of sight, the ideal spot for a trial run. The prompt popped up, wall repairs cost 30 dinars. I mentally clicked yes, and the collapsed rocks hoisted themselves up. No flashy sparks, no magical glow, just straight up stones, soaring through the air and locking into a flawless wall structure. It looked like some ghost bricklayer was grinding on overdrive. The sole sound was rocks scraping against rock, completely drowned out by the evening bustle. I just dropped 30 dinars to absolutely break physics. Totally worth the cash. Late night war room. I'm sketching out defensive strategies on parchment with charcoal. Meanwhile, the system is throwing up a 3D hologram meant for my eyes only. The main assault lands right here, I said, prodding the gate on the tactical map. Orcs are big fans of the direct approach. Being subtle really isn't their vibe. Galvin rubbed the scar on his chin. That part of the fortification requires mending in a few places. Flashing my best cryptic smirk, I replied, I've got it covered. His lone eye narrowed with doubt, but he let it slide. Smart move. As the night grew deeper, I slipped quietly down to the old wine cellar. Soggy stone walls, a couple of oil lamps, and a dozen system troops, lined up in flawless rows like store mannequins. Vacant stares, completely frozen bodies, zero personality whatsoever. Creepy as hell, but incredibly useful. Also majorly, system upgrade. Promote all qualified troops. Fee, 45 dinars. 3 Imperial recruits advanced to Imperial infantry. Fresh ability unlocked. Basic shield wall. Mohad Prusdis. The trio of soldiers shook. Their low-tier leather gear emitted a dim radiance. Their basic pikes shifted into heavy-duty Imperial blades, and proper kite shields popped into existence on their backs. Glancing at my remaining stash of 485 dinars, I dedicated the rest of the night to mending every single busted section of the barricade, block by block. The system reconstructed my fortress, while the entire town was fast asleep. Daybreak arrived. The locals stepped outside and stopped dead. The walls, that smashed, crumbling, pathetic excuse for a defense setup, looked flawless. Every gap patched up, every breach sealed tight, as if a construction crew pulled off a total miracle overnight. Long live the Starfaller, someone bellowed, and it spread like wildfire. Suddenly, the entire crowd was chanting it. Starfaller, probably because of that arrow stunt during the fight, I figure. Galvin's fabricated myth regarding the falling star arrow had officially become my actual title. Every local troop who caught wind of it gained +5 morale. I am literally boosting my combat stats. Through pure branding, marketing works across every dimension. Day 3, Daybreak. A sudden horn blast nearly gave the whole fortress a massive collective panic attack. Sentries rushed to the ramparts in total chaos, only to realize it was just an exercise. Way too slow. Galvin was already barking. Orcs would be chugging brew from your empty skulls by now. I observed everything from the watchtower. The system-generated troops operated in flawless harmony, acting as if they shared a hive mind. The local militia ran around like frantic chickens that had just figured out what fear actually means. Once the training wrapped up, I assembled all the squad commanders. The real ordeal is fast approaching. Effective today, we are shifting to emergency rations. Everyone walked away looking dead serious, and then the system. Push an alert that made my blood run absolutely cold. Scout alert. Orc reconnaissance spotted within the Frost Whisper Mountains. Main vanguard estimated to arrive in 36 to 48 hours. 48 hours, maybe 36. War Chief Gruel is marching with his Skull Cup fantasies, while I'm sitting here with a patched-up fort, a handful of upgraded grunts, one one-eyed lunatic, and an alias I never even wanted. Let's see if the Starfaller guy can pull through round 2. I stand on the battlements, staring at that system. Scout warning like it's a ticking timer on a bomb, strapped right to my chest. Orc scouts are roaming the Frost Whisper Mountains. They're closing in. Tick-tock. Deep breath. Inhaling that freezing air felt like swallowing a glacier. Well, at least it woke my brain up. My lord, Galvin's loud voice could wake the dead and seriously annoy them. Patrol found refugees. I bolted down through the morning fog. About 20 ragged humans were huddled together by the front gate. A white-haired old man collapsed to his knees, his forehead hitting the cold stone. Please, my lord. The orcs wiped out our village. We've been running for 3 days straight. Heartbreaking, sure, but my gaze had already locked onto something else. At the back of the crowd, a tall figure stood hunched over, yet he still towered over everyone. He wore a tattered cloak, but I caught a metallic gleam underneath it. This guy was no simple farmer. The system confirmed it, a recruitable hero unit. Royce Blackblade, level 15. Trait, Tactical Command. Defense and damage plus 15%. Level 15. I'm only level 2, and this guy is walking among my refugee line. Like some legendary, top-tier weapon disguised. As a homeless drifter. Open the gates. Edwin, get them set up in the East Wing. Give them hot soup and clean bandages. Everyone shuffled inside, except for Mr. Tall, dark, and dangerous. He just stood there, refusing to enter. I like to see which way the doors swing open first. He said, his voice sounding like gravel in a blender. So, I don't hit a wall if I need to make a break for it. His right hand hadn't left his hip a single time. A concealed short sword. This guy sleeps ready to kill. Royce Blackblade. Former squad commander. 3rd Royal Legion. He introduced himself, sounding like he was reciting his own obituary. Currently just a stray, homeless dog. The system info checked out. Good, he's not spinning lies. He's just dramatically blunt. The Schwying family always welcomes capable warriors. I spoke up, deliberately taking my time. Especially guys who know how orcs operate. Glaring at me, he muttered, "You know my identity? I just know you're my best bet to defend this fortress." Dodging the question. Smooth move. Your pay is 3 square meals a day in a winter, where you aren't on the run. That actually made Royce chuckle. Pretty sharp, kid. It's a deal. Hero Unit Royce Blackblade has joined. Loyalty, 65. Initial approval is a measly 65? Are you kidding? I just saved him from starving in a ditch. Tough crowd. Cut to the war room. Parchment maps were laid out across a rough wooden table. Royce traced the terrain with the precision of a surgeon. Inspecting a patient. This isn't some typical raid. He pointed to a pass. Situated on the western flank of the Frost Whisper Range. Orcs normally march down Bloodhoof Trail. It takes them straight to the wealthy River Valley town. They went way out of their path to strike Schwy territory. There's a real motive here. Galvin scratched beneath his iron gauntlet. Provisions. The South Village granary is bursting with fresh grain. Right then, Edwin burst. Straight through the entrance, looking like he'd uncovered either a massive fortune or a live explosive. My lord! Blacksmith Grime spotted this among the captured spoils. Unclenching his fist, he revealed a dark, reddish-brown stone. Raw, unrefined iron ore. Grime claims this material doesn't match any regional veins. Those orcs must have uncovered a supply somewhere up in the Frost Whisper Mountains. The entire room went dead silent. Royce's face brightened like a kid who just found out Christmas came early. Iron ore, well, that clicks everything into place. Iron is the one resource or clans can never get enough of. My mind immediately started racing. An iron mine means steady revenue, which means a total game changer. The catch? Running it requires manpower and funding, and I'm fresh out of both. Every single asset, right now, must be spent on simple survival. Keep the iron or under wraps, I concluded. We handle the orc threat first, then the mine. Priorities. Phase 1, stay alive. Phase 2, strike it rich. Can't cash in if you're a corpse. Sire, a messenger from Greystone Fortress has arrived. Galvin and Royce traded glances. Greystone Fortress, our closest neighbor. Lord Horn Greystone's reputation? Absolute trash. Inside the Great Hall, a lanky, tall guy draped in lavish mink robes was checking our tapestries, as if he were strolling through a gallery. He spun around with the most over-the-top bow I'd ever witnessed. Allow me to first extend Lord Horn's deepest sympathies regarding the tragic passing of the late Baron. His bravery and intellect were celebrated across the North. That bogus condolences routine lasted precisely 4 seconds before his demeanor flipped to total upbeat. Mind you, times change. My master is aware of your issues with the orcs, and kindly proposes sending 50 veteran troops for permanent defensive deployment. 50 soldiers. Honestly, that's a massive favor. But my gut was totally screaming. Lord Horn's charity is rather unexpected. I nonchalantly swirled the wine in my goblet. What's the catch here? The messenger produced a gold-trimmed parchment from his cuff. Like a sleight of hand trick, my master's sole niece, Lady Eleanor, has just reached 17. He displayed a painted likeness of a young woman. A marital pact would secure our frontiers. For good. The entire room went so quiet you could hear a pin drop. An arranged marriage. 50 troops in exchange for turning me into Horn's puppet. Via family obligations. This dude wanted to seize the Schwying domain with a smile and a relative. Inform Lord Horn. Take it easy, I muttered. The Schwying family cleans up its own messes. The messenger's fake smile shattered like brittle ice. My lord also requested that I remind you. Regarding the late grain taxes from last quarter, they'll be settled in full post-harvest. Plus interest, I cut in. Edwin, get a cozy guest room ready. Our guest leaves tomorrow. The plastic grin vanished. The envoy snapped his scroll shut like snapping a twig. It seems the Shuaying family's conceit is as baked into their DNA as their poverty, he sneered. Taking 2 steps back. My master won't forget this insult. I'd honestly rather crash in the woods than spend another second in this castle that's ready to turn into rubble. He stormed off. Galvin slammed his fist down, making the candles rattle. Dirty leech, trying to bleed us dry while we're down. Couldn't have said it better myself. As night fell, I headed down to the cells. Damp air, blood, and rust, truly cozy. The system flashed a prisoner management screen. Because of course it has one. The bound orc snapped his head up, his yellowish-brown eyes narrowing in the gloom. Screw you, beard. Grull's gonna tear your heart out. Shout out to the system's new auto-translate perk. I can now follow orc trash talk perfectly in real time. What a massive privilege. I pulled a roasted deer leg out of my inventory and dropped it on the floor, grease sizzling. The aroma was unbelievable. Even I wanted a bite, and I'd just eaten dinner. Want some? I asked in broken Orcish. The system displayed his profile, Grass Bloodfawn. Bloodskar tribe. Combat c'est à min status. 30 out of 100, hostile. Recruitment terms. Lockup for 3 days. Currently on day 2. Supply meat or booze, plus 20 progress. Topple his chief, plus 50. Grash stared down the meat, his belly rumbling loudly enough to bounce off the walls. Starvation versus pride, the ultimate showdown. Starvation took the win in like 6 seconds flat. He grabbed the food, shredding into it like a wood chipper devouring a log. Recruitment progress, 30 out of 50. But right then, a red alert flashed. Hiring orcs will absolutely destroy army morale. Every orc signed up equals -1 morale. Keeping any orcs in the ranks triggers a daily -2 morale penalty, since human troops really aren't thrilled about teaming up with the monsters who slaughtered their buddies last week. I checked that box under problems for future me. I flipped him a container of dwarven moonshine, the hardcore stuff that could dissolve wall paint, and drop a stallion. Grash's eyes popped. He caught a whiff of the flask, snorting hard. Dwarf shine? Premium crap. He slammed it down. The scars across his green throat flexed with every gulp. Damn, this orc could seriously drink. Spill about the Bloodskar clan. Straight to the point. Especially that iron mine. The booze got him talking perfectly. Chief Grull's raiders stumbled onto a cave-in, up north by the Frost Whisper Peaks. 2 months back. Found exposed red stones. Iron ore. I tossed him another piece of dry deer meat. Where exactly? Grash sketched in the dirt with a coal lump while chewing. The 3rd Bear Peak. He made a ring around it. The excavation site still holds 50 fighters on guard. What's the total head count for the whole clan? His gaze shifted with a brief flash of hesitation. But that dwarven liquor was working its magic. 6 raiding squads. He muttered, tallying them up on beefy fingers. And then, he cut himself off. His mouth clamped shut, eyes filled with suspicion. Too late, buddy. I already got way more out of you than you meant to spill. So I just played dumb. What about the elderly and kids living back at the mine? No, the nest is at. He cuts himself off, eyes narrowing to slits. Can't say. Fair enough. Got plenty out of them anyway. Right then, Royce burst straight through the dungeon door. The knight was still wearing his leather armor. My lord, our scouts just spotted at least 500 on the move, heading right toward the Frost Whisper Mountains. 500? That's no simple raiding party. That's an entire migration. Grash's whole body went rigid. His right hand instinctively twitched toward the spot where his war axe used to hang. A tribal migration? I inquired, tracking his expression intently. His pupils shrunk instantly. Nailed it. The Bloodskar clan isn't just executing a raid. They're transplanting their whole society. Women, children, elders, the lot. They struck iron in these peaks, and they're shifting their whole setup over here. This isn't some hit and run. They're trying to claim the ore. I stood up, my leather armor groaning. You'll end up making the right call, Grash. Left him sitting alone in the dark with his dwarven hooch, and his mounting regrets. Cut to the pitch-black hours right before dawn. Bang, bang, bang rattling against my door. My lord, scout report. Royce's voice boomed through the heavy oak. The main orc army has hit the north village. They're on us. An entire tribe's worth of pissed-off green muscle, headed by a warlord who wants to turn my skull into a goblet. And they just pitched camp right in the charred remnants of my settlement. Our 48 hours just hit 0. Showtime. I bolted upright in bed and pulled up. The system display before my eyes could even properly adjust. Orcs occupying the north village, main vanguard. gunning for my head. I need major firepower, and I need it damn fast. Barracks feature is now unlocked. 30 Imperial archers are ready for 900 dinars. 900 dinars for 30 archers? That wipes out my whole stash. Did the system literally just check my funds and straight up decide to clean me out? Purchase confirmed. No hesitation. Can't take cash to the grave anyway. Suddenly, the castle horn blared. My lord, troops have arrived outside. I hurried up the wall, and there they stood. 30 archers clad in identical brown leather armor, their longbows shining under the morning sun, with quivers crammed full of arrows. Plus, every single shoulder guard was engraved with the Shuai eagle crest. By the gods, a sentry muttered, "It's the legendary Shuai Ranger Company." Turns out the system had cooked up a backstory for them. These fighters didn't just manifest out of nowhere. Nope, according to everyone's suddenly synchronized memories. They were an elite ranger squad, returning from some top-secret deployment. The system is basically spinning fanfiction about my forces and brainwashing everyone into believing it. Their commander executed a flawless military salute. Alan Longbow, reporting with a ranger detachment. My lord. Impeccable timing, Alan. I slapped his shoulder like we were old brothers in arms, rather than total strangers who met 3 seconds ago. Get your boys up to the Arrow Towers. Orcs could ambush us any second. Morale +5. Pro reinforcements have arrived. Right then, the system unleashed an alert that made my inner gamer absolutely nerd out. Defense mode initiated. Special access granted. Siege engine summoning. Available for catapults. Ammunition. 40 stone loads, 10 per unit. Catapults. I actually get catapults. Just then, the enemy intel dropped. 300 orc warriors and 15 wolf riders. 300 against my, wait, let me count, just over 60 soldiers and a handful of armed farmers. Fantastic odds, simply brilliant. I strolled past the parapet, faking a security check, while slyly pressing my bare hand against the stone of the inner wall. Spawned 4 catapults. Done. The ground began to shake. Sentry guards peered over the edge, panicking. Get back. 4 bronze-plated siege engines emerged from the structures. Foundation, looking like robotic beasts waking from a long nap. They were soaking with damp cellar moisture, complete with literal cobwebs draping off them. The system even threw in visual effect for the vibe. Solid 5 stars for the production design. Edwin's eyes looked ready to pop right out. He's worked for this family for 3 decades. He knew damn well no siege engines were ever stashed in the cellar. But then he stared at me, and whatever gold glow the system added to my gaze seemingly forced him to keep his doubts to himself. He turned right around to the dazed troops with the effortless poise of a master bullshitter. Did you seriously think a 3-century-old Shuai castle will be left without contingency protocols? Edwin, my man, you absolute legend, covering for my magical, weird nonsense, without me even asking. Just then, Grime the Smith gasped so violently he nearly choked on his tongue. He pointed directly at the weapon's internal gearworks. Look, this is the former master's personal crest. The crowd gathered around to check. Sure enough, there was a weathered eagle head engraving on the bronze rod. The system had actually faked my late father's mark right onto the hardware. Psychological framing succeeded. Troop morale and belief. 91%. This setup doesn't just materialize artillery. It runs identity theft scams using dead people. Honestly, I'm amazed and a little freaked out. Galvin gave the closest weapon chassis a kick, noted the dense, solid thud, and smirked like a total maniac on Christmas morning. Solid coffins, ideal for burying orcs. He grabbed a pair of petrified recruits by their collars. Commencing load. Morale più 10. Ancestral protection active. By dawn, all 4 catapults were fully loaded and set. And talk about perfect timing, because the orc horde surged over the horizon like a massive green tidal wave. Battlefield awareness triggered. Target leader identified. Chieftain Grull. Red skull indicator. The system automatically focused my vision. There he was, astride a colossal black warwolf, towering 2 whole heads above any other orc. His dark green skin was scarred with white gashes, looking like someone had treated him like a chopping board. Slung over his shoulder was a battle axe the size of a door, still caked in dried, brown bloodstains. The bastard didn't even bother wiping my dad's blood off his weapon. Oh, this is personal. Real personal. Catapults ready. I bellow my fingers, tracing the timber frame like a kid playing with a new toy. This felt just like the game. Honestly, even better. I could actually feel the wood pulsing and smell the grease on the machinery. My hands were literally trembling with adrenaline, and I couldn't tell if it was dread or pure nerd hype. Target the densest crowds. The orcs let loose a war cry that rattled the air. As they charged, all 4 catapults discharged at once. The racket sounded like 4 furious gods, clearing their throats in unison. One bundle of rocks screeched straight toward Gruul, but that freak somehow anticipated the strike. With insane agility, he dove sideways off his mount and hurled a blue-bladed hand axe, severing the net's rope mid-flight. The stones harmlessly scattered across empty dirt. Are you for real? He just parried a catapult projectile. What kind of final boss BS is this? But meanwhile, catapult number 2 hit perfectly its payload. The cluster detonated right inside a dense marching unit. Absolute bloody chaos. Gory limbs flew in directions limbs never should. Damn straight. I pumped my fist. This felt way more rewarding than clicking a mouse button. I was just about to shout for another round when Gruul began barking orders at his squad. The orcs instantly broke their tight ranks and shifted into scattered wolf-pack maneuvers. Sheesh. They countered that in a heartbeat. Normal gaming AI wouldn't adapt this fast. Real-life difficulty is totally broken. Where's the patch? Where's the nerf? Aim higher. I screamed, unwilling to cut my catapult fun short. The boulders soared higher on this run, nailing maybe a dozen stragglers. But following that 5th barrage, the orcs had reached the foot of the walls. Unloading scaling ladders. Time for melee. Archers, fire at will. I cursed reality's brutal scaling settings in my head. If this were a game, I'd have just quick loaded an old save by now. No respawn points in real life. Awful game design. 0 out of 10, would not recommend. I gripped my trembling hunting bow. The UI targeting aid kicked in. I locked eyes on the orc holding their battle standard. An arrow pierced his throat, dropping the banner. A wave of panic rippled through the orc line. Don't mention it. Suddenly a blood-drenched orc leaped right over the rampart before me, aiming his axe straight at my face. I lunged aside, snatching 3 arrows from my quiver all at once. The auto-load skill triggered instantly. 3 shafts flew almost simultaneously. The first shot ricocheted off his blade. The second shot buried deep into his shoulder. The third shot struck directly between his eyes. Triple shot. Brand new skill unlocked. Gale shooting. I'm transforming into an absolute archery machine. Combine this physical body with the system's aim assist, and it equals pure, unadulterated destruction, my lord. The east wall is collapsing. A messenger staggered toward me, looking like he'd just seen a ghost. And the ghost was winning. The system map confirmed it. The east wall garrison was practically wiped out. 3 scaling ladders are already up, with orcs swarming over. Royce, get the backup troops over to the east wall. I bolted to find some high ground for a better vantage point, and spotted one. 5 arrows. 5 orcs scaling the ladders. 5 orcs, who are definitely no longer scaling ladders. The 5th one plummeted backward and slammed into 2 others, knocking them off like bowling pins. Achievement unlocked. Ladder Guardian. Pretty sweet title, huh? It'd look awesome on my tombstone if I bite the dust today. Boom! The main gate's battering ram struck, cracking the door's support beam. The gate was letting out a groan like a dying beast, with massive splinters bursting everywhere. Guards perched above the entrance were frantically hauling heavy stones. Archers, cover them. I drew a pair of arrows. Let them fly, and 2 orcs manning the ram collapsed. My bowstring was still vibrating when I caught the heavy thud of soldiers. Behind me, wrestling a massive block of stone right to the ledge. The boulder plummeted. A direct smash right onto the front of the battering ram. 2 orcs got flattened, but a horde of green bodies instantly filled the empty slots like the world's most messed up game of whack-a-mole. And then I caught sight of him. An orc sporting a skull helmet, stationed right behind the ram. A field commander. He was the mastermind directing this entire onslaught. I reached into the pouch on my belt. 3 premium, armor-piercing arrows, the expensive kind. System lock-on, engaged. The first arrow pierced right through a gap in his bone helm. The second arrow drove straight into his weapon arm. The third arrow hit dead center of his chest. Their leader went down, and the ram crew lost it. Defender morale is sitting at 15%. Keep throwing those rocks. I barked, pointing at the entrance. The troops shoved the final few rocks over the ledge. Sickening crunches followed, then the orcs started wailing. Even so, the gate was already giving way. Looking through the widening splits, I could spot a massive sea of green skin shoving from the other side. They were snarling and out for blood. My blood, to be exact. The barrier was right on the verge of snapping, and I was completely out of catapult rocks. My arrow supply was running low, and my genius tactic of blast whatever moves was finally running into a serious wall. The second wave wasn't finished yet, and honestly, it was looking pretty ugly. The east gate burst inward as if it were made of cheap crackers. Leaping through the breach, first was a wolf as massive as a horse, dripping venomous, spittle from teeth that could easily snap a guy in half. And sitting right on top of that nightmare fuel was Chief Grohl himself, sporting 2 broken arrow shafts, poking right out of his left shoulder. Muddy green blood oozed through the seams of his armor, but it didn't seem to faze him one bit. Seriously, this dude treats arrows like jewelry. The system UI kindly flashed his health bar, which was hovering right above his head. HP 320/400. Hey, lil punk. He growled. His voice sounded like a massive rock dragging across rough gravel. I'm gonna string your guts from my battle flag. Props for creativity on that thread, I guess. But major points deducted for trying to murder me. I snatched up my final 3 arrows. Time for a triple shot. First arrow went flying right for his face. Grohl jerked his heavy axe upward and sliced it right in 2 mid-flight, sending splinters everywhere. The second arrow was already closing in on his throat, but he wrenched his head aside, causing a metal tip to just graze his iron neck guard, throwing sparks. A third arrow pierced the opening in his right shoulder. Joint while he was recovering. Critical hit. HP 320-285. Right shoulder injured. Attack speed -10%. He bellowed, but pressed his charge. The battle axe sliced through the air in a deadly arc. That would have cleaved me in 2. Idoveazide. The axe slammed straight into the stone. Flying stone shards slicing my cheek open. HP 87 out of 110. 76/110. Oh, great, I've got a health bar as well. And it's moving in the wrong direction. Shield wall. Galvin's roar cut through the chaos. 3 Imperial soldiers locked right into formation, their shields braced. Grohl's axe crashed down like a hammer of judgment. 2 shields completely imploded on impact. Splinters flying like shrapnel. But a one-eyed, bleeding, utterly unhinged Galvin slammed his shoulder against his fracturing shield and dug in. Shield wall activated. Damage mitigated by 20%. Swapping out the bow, I unsheathed my steel longsword. The blade sang as it cleared the scabbard. Weapon switched. Bow dash one-handed sword. Proficiency drop. 65/42. My sword skill is literally half my bow skill. Fantastic. Bringing a B- to an A+ fight. Grohl was winding up to finish off Galvin when my blade grazed his neck, just a superficial nick. A spray of crimson droplets scattered through the air like dark gems. A fresh recruit seized the opening and thrust his spear at the massive wolf, forcing it back a couple steps. Teamwork. Glorious, desperate teamwork. I intentionally lunged to the left, targeting Grohl's arrow-maimed right arm. All you know is how to sneak attack. Grohl whirled around with a horizontal axe swipe. I ducked right under it. As the blade plunged into his shoulder, Grohl shrieked. But rather than backing off like any normal beast, his fury levels instantly redlined. He flexed his shoulder muscles around my sword, locking it right inside his flesh, and swung his axe at my chest with his free hand. He literally used his own body as a weapon trap. What a total psycho. Ditching the sword, I bent backward like I was doing the world's most terrified limbo. The axe blade scraped right across my breastplate, leaving a massive gash that looked like a canyon. HP 76/110. 62/110. That chest piece seriously just saved my life. Even if it looks like modern art now. 3 archers up on the wall let fly at once, forcing Grohl on the defensive. Diving into a roll, I grabbed a discarded spear from the dirt. Weapon swapped. Sword of polearm. Talent active. Infantry commander. Polearm damage plus 15%. That's my 3rd weapon in 60 seconds. I'm not a soldier. I'm an all-you-can-eat weapon buffet. The spear darted forward like a viper's tongue, slicing a deep tear across Grohl's midsection. His massive wolf sensed the threat and pounced at me, but a pair of spearmen flanked it from both sides. Thrusting upward, I carved a bone-deep gash into the beast's leg. Coward! Grohl vaulted off the crippled wolf and charged me on foot. The axe whistled through the air with enough momentum to split the world. I raised the spear shaft to block. The wood snapped right in two like a toothpick. As I reeled backward, Galvin and his squad formed a human shield ahead of me, buying me time with their lives. Grohl grinned, bearing every single thong. Hoisting his axe for the execution, Galvin hurled his short sword. It struck Grohl's wrist, throwing the fatal swing off course, as the axe embedded itself deep in the fortress wall. Rather than lodging in a skull, the axe was embedded in stone. Grohl's hand was mangled, his weapon stuck fast, and his right shoulder bristled with arrows. This was my shot, the ultimate window. I snatched up the shattered spear, the half lacking a point, and drove it forward with every ounce of my strength. The blunt wooden shaft slammed right into Gruul's shoulder. Sinking deep. Critical hit. Gruul HP 0. The chieftain's massive frame came crashing down, toppling like a chopped tree. His fading eyes stared at the very object that ended him. A pointless, busted stick. I spat out some blood. Who says you need a sharp edge to take a guy out? Achievement unlocked. Reasonable persuasion. Defeat an enemy using a blunt weapon. Man, the system has a twisted sense of humor. I literally just impaled a warlord with a glorified broom handle, and they call the achievement reasonable persuasion. Can't even be mad. That's pure comedy. Gruul twitched twice and went completely still. The system alerts blew up. Elite unit slain, Gruul Bone Crusher. XP plus 1000. Level up to 3. Strength plus 1. Agility plus 1. Charisma plus 1. New talent unlocked. Orc Slayer. Damage versus orcs plus 20%. The second Gruul died, the entire enemy front collapsed. A few orcs fled, while others went berserk and started butchering everything, including their own kind. All forces charge. The gates threw open. The cavalry surged out first, with the infantry pressing hard right behind them in tight ranks. The leaderless orcs were quickly surrounded, cut off, and picked apart by the archers one by one. By sundown, the battle was finished. Snow Eagle Castle held. Just barely, but it held. I rested on the wall as a medic wrapped my gashes. The system had already kicked off my health regeneration. 60/120 and ticking upward. My chest looked like it had been run over by a cheese. Greater, but thanks to the game mechanics, I could still move around without a hitch. My lord, you're built different, the medic stammered, staring wide-eyed. Anyone else would be completely paralyzed from wounds like these. I just grinned and told him to go patch up the others. It's not like I can tell him I've got video game health, Reagan. Right on cue, the in-game stats popped up. Battle of Snow Eagle Castle. Defensive victory. Orc warriors slain, 287. Wolf riders eliminated, 9. Friendly losses, 34 infantry, 2 light cavalry. Looted, 2,000 dinars. 50 iron ingots, 1 orc war banner, and 800 sacks of grain. 2 grand in dinars. I went from dead broke to filthy rich in a single fight. And that grain stockpile completely fixes my food shortage for weeks. I took Gruul's massive battle axe and mounted it right above the hearth in the Great Hall. Gotta have a trophy wall. Every ruler needs one. The victory banquet was wild. Galvin raised his wooden tankard high. To our chieftain. First, he pins the boss's arm with a couple of arrows. Then he finishes him off with a stick. The room erupted. Right in the middle of the partying, Edwin leaned in close and murmured, "Sire, that orc captive down in the cells is asking for you. Claims he has some vital intel." I put down my drink and walked down to the deepest dungeon. Brash Bloodfong stared up at me with a conflicted look in his eyes. His manacles rattled as he shifted weight. "Human Commander, you took Gruul's life?" I stayed quiet. "The Bloodscar clan is done for." He sounded oddly peaceful. "By our laws, the Conqueror claims the right to dictate what happens to the beaten tribe. The women, the children, the lands. All of it." Suddenly, a system prompt popped up with a choice. Tribal Legacy, event triggered. Option 1, eradication. Execute everyone. Gain 2,000 dinars. All orc factions will permanently despise you. Option 2, enslavement. Forced labor. Boosts iron output by 30%, but demands 300 dinars monthly for guard and security costs. Pretty much managing a penal colony. Option 3, assimilation. Welcome those who yield. Recruit 22 fiercely loyal orc fighters. Human troops take a 10-point morale hit for 30 days. Seeing as they really don't vibe with orc co-workers. Total annihilation is messed up and turns every orc clan into a lifetime foe. Enslavement is pricey and honestly just repulsive. Assimilation drains motivation, but recruits 22 orc fighters who are actually down to fight for me. Grash, if I offered you the chance to command whatever remains of the Bloodscar clan, what choice would you make? Chains dragged across rock, and every single muscle in his body flexed tight. Human, are you testing your captive's remaining patience? I don't play around with a warrior's honor. I step closer. Yield, and your people won't just scrape by. They will endure as true warriors. His breathing grew heavy, booming like thunder. The cell practically shook. Then slowly, excruciatingly slowly, Grash sank to one knee, his shackles slamming hard against the stone. For like a magistrate's gavel. By the spirits of my forebears, the Bloodscar clan shall fight by your side. Selection finalized. Integration strategy active. Added 22 orc fighters. Technology unlocked. Rudimentary tribal assimilation. Alert! Human troop motivation drops by 10 for 30 days. 22 orc brawlers. A month of salty human soldiers. And the blueprint for something that absolutely nobody in this realm has ever attempted. A multi-species legion serving a human commander who battered his rival. Chief to death with a branch. My old man would have been either incredibly proud or totally disgusted. Honestly, probably both. I headed back to the celebratory banquet and instantly sensed that something was off. Every single fighter in the hall was instinctively backing away from a person standing near the hearth. An individual draped in a silver-gray mantle was studying Gruel's mounted battle axe on the wall. Pale silver hair cascading from beneath the cowl, like flowing liquid metal. Amateurish metalwork. The outsider remarked, unacceptable for Frost Whisper, or... She spun around, revealing pointed ears and vibrant green eyes, with a blade sheathed in fresh ivy at her waist. An elf. A real, pointy-eared, impossibly elegant elf. Just casually strolled into my castle. Mid-party, totally acting like she owned the place. I am Ethel of the Silver Pine clan, ranger of the Frost Whisper Peaks. She nodded toward the mountains outside. We observed the entire clash. Watched as former allies? I narrow my eyes. Elven arrows could have saved more lives. She didn't even flinch. We don't meddle in human conflicts, especially when traitors mask themselves as allies. Then, she pulled a bloodstained strip of fabric from her cloak. A roaring bear head crest was barely visible through the dried gore. My blood ran cold. That was Horn's family crest, the Greystone Envoy's emblem. Last night, Ethel said, pressing the cloth onto the table. Our scout spotted his envoy leaving the orc camp. Everything clicked like a lock snapping shut. Horns, niece, the marriage proposal, the joint defense terms, and that slimy envoy who stormed out, claiming he'd rather rough it in the wilderness. He didn't sleep in the wilderness. He went straight to the orcs to tell Grohl to strike. Horn wanted to absorb my land through marriage. When I refused, he pivoted to plan B, letting the orcs wipe me out. He probably planned to swoop in afterward and claim the territory as a concerned neighbor. I brought Ethel to the war room. Evidence. My voice came out steadier than I expected. The elf gave me a condescending smirk. Humans. Always needing truth spoon-fed before they'll swallow it. She produced a sheepskin scroll. Take a look at this, little eagle. It was a terrain map of the Frost Whisper Mountains, with a red line traced from the blood scar. Tribe's old camp straight to my northern village. The assault path was mapped out, organized, and funded. A few days back, our scouts caught a courier from Horn. He bartered grub and steel with the orc horde as payment to raid your lands. Deep breath. While in a hand, I thought elves dodged human drama. Ethel's vibrant green eyes turned icy. Because Horn's digging crew chopped down the silver pine, our sacred grove. Her tone shifted to something lethal. When those ancient, millennia-old trees crashed down, our seer listened to the mother tree, crying. So this ain't exactly charity. It's just payback with extra steps. A bargain. Then I replied. The elves drop intel and back up, and I'll completely shut down Horn's mining gig. Clever little lordling. Her smirk grew predatory, but I didn't swing by just to drop bad news. She clapped her hands. A pair of elven fighters stepped out of the darkness, clad in vine-woven gear and quiet as the grave, lugging a heavy oak lockbox between them. They popped it open, and my system UI lit up gold. Elite unit discovered. Patanian archers, elf-trained. Secret unit tech tree unlocked. Available to recruit Patanian rangers. Requirement. Elven rapport at 80 or higher. Batavian archers? My inner gaming nerd almost blacked out. Back in the actual game, Batavian archers absolutely dominate ranged fights. They deal crazy DPS, and the player base straight up calls them Batavian sword saints. Since they're absolute beasts in close quarters combat too, it's basically like ordering a large pie and realizing it comes with a free sports car. 20 U longbows sat inside the crate, all of them engraved with silver, vine-like motifs. Ethel drew a shaft equipped with a spiraling, grooved tip. Silver Pine's signature armor-shredding arrows. They'll bust right through oak shields 3 fingers thick. She showed off the stopping power by nonchalantly firing a shot straight into one of my hall's load-bearing beams. The projectile sank in, so incredibly deep that the feathers kept buzzing. Weapon evaluation. Elven Longbow, superior armor piercing más 30%. Range plus 20%. What's the price? I inquired, trying not to drool. Simple. Stop Horn's logging. She paused, her emerald eyes locking onto mine. Allow the Silver Pine clan to oversee iron mine operations. My eyebrow went up. Oversee. We won't touch your profits. But the mining can't severely damage nature. I had to physically restrain my smile. The system generates mines that don't need traditional support beams. Environmental damage? What environmental damage? My magical video game mines are basically surgery compared to normal mining. She was asking me to accept 20 elite bows, 200 armor-piercing arrows, access to the best archer unit in the game, and a mutual defense pact, in exchange for something that cost me literally nothing. Deal. But you train my archers too. Wise choice. She vanished into the shadows like morning fog, leaving only the faint scent of pine. Elves. Dramatic exits are apparently genetic. Next morning, war room, map on the table. Royce, Galvin, and Edwin gathered around. That rat bastard. Galvin's fist hit the table so hard a candle fell over. Horn hired the orcs to attack us. Royce studied the red line on the map with cold, professional fury. He doesn't just want the iron mine. He wants all of Schweing territory. I nodded. The marriage proposal was Plan A, legal annexation. When I refused, his envoy rushed to the orc camp to trigger the attack. Plan B. But what can we do? Edwin wrung his hands. Greystone has 3 times our forces. Direct confrontation is suicide, which is why we won't fight directly. My finger tapped the map. Horn thinks both sides, us and the orcs, are destroyed right now. He's holed up in his fortress, plotting how to cash in on the slaughter. I glanced over at Grash, who was posted up in the corner. How many Bloodscar fighters are left back at the iron mine? 50. Just the old, injured and weak. His thick finger tapped the map. Gruul took every last elite. If I send you back carrying Gruul's war axe, will they fall in line? Grash's eyes narrowed. By tradition, whoever slays the chieftain commands the tribe. But I'll need that axe for proof. Edwin grabbed that war axe off the wall. While Edwin stepped out, I set the snare. Horn figures were completely crippled. He'll make his move any minute, marching his troops to wipe out the surviving orcs and lock down the iron mine. Colluding with orcs to strike a noble house is high treason, punishable by hanging and the total forfeiture of his title. I stared down at the map with a cold, ruthless calculation. That would have absolutely terrified the original host of this body. Grash, take the axe and go take back your camp. Then put out the word that Snow Eagle Castle has fallen, leaving only 30 wounded orcs holding the mine. Grash's fangs bared in a grin. You're using us as bait. No, I want you to be the hunters. I gestured toward a gorge on the map. Horn will take the shortcut. You flank them on both sides. The moment his army marches into the canyon. Grash smiled like a living nightmare. Seal the exits with rock slides. Then butcher the lot of them. This orc gets it. 3 days later, at Bloodclaw Canyon, I stood concealed in the shadows high above the gorge floor, watching Horn's 200 vanguard soldiers walk right into my ambush, like ants trailing a line of sugar. Horn himself rode a charger, decked out in gold-trimmed armor, his gauntlet hand impatiently slapping his thigh, the absolute textbook definition of aristocratic arrogance. His second-in-command murmured, "Sir, right up ahead. Scouts report there are only 30 injured orcs, plus some women and kids." Horn rubbed his chin, wearing that arrogant little noble smirk. By the power vested in me by the king, I decree the wiping out of these savages, who threaten the safety of our realm. We're taking back a royal mining vein. This is true justice. Justice? The guy literally hired orcs to slaughter my family, and now he's preaching about justice? The sheer nerve is almost impressive. As his battalion hit the middle of the canyon, an Orcish war horn blasted off the cliff sides. Boom! Massive rocks came tumbling down both walls of the canyon exit. The escape route was blocked. Horn's troops instantly panicked, horses shrieking and armor rattling. 200 soldiers jammed into a rocky corridor with no exit. Hold the line. Fall into defensive ranks. Horn bellowed, his flabby frame shivering. Inside his flashy armor, they're just primitive orcs. Right then, 30 marksmen sporting snow eagle capes showed up on the ridge lines above him. I stood at the absolute peak, steadily drawing my hunting bow all the way back. System: faction troops, Empire-trained archers. Volley damage bonus, plus 30% from high ground advantage. Horn, second in command, threw up a shield, but an arrow ripped straight through his throat. Blood splattered all over Horn's gilded spalder. It's an ambush. We've been set up. Horn shrieked so intensely that his voice cracked. Fall back. Fall BA boom. Another massive rock slide. The system infantry had been shoving boulders from the top. Once Horn's numbers were cut in half, I loosed a whistling signal shaft. The orcs were primed and ready. They tore down the banks, screaming fierce battle cries. Great axes and spiked maces pulverized whatever remained of Horn's so-called elites. On behalf of the Bloodscar clan, Grash hoisted Gruul's massive battle axe and chopped straight through Horn's war standard, splitting the pole cleanly down the middle. By the time the final Greystone trooper fell, the entire ravine floor was drenched in crimson. Grash slammed Horn face first into the blood-soaked dirt, his gold-plated armor completely caked in filth and grime. Please. Horn stammered, his teeth rattling like dice. I can pay a ransom. I'll hand over my lands. I retrieved the heavy axe from Grash, testing its considerable weight. Conspiring with orcs to raid a noble household, I remarked softly, my tone laced with heavy sarcasm. Yeah, that's an offense I really can't afford to overlook. Horn's eyes widened in sheer panic as reality finally sank in. No, hold on. I'll talk. Catch you in the next life, Lord Horn. I gave Grash a nod. Good job. Wrap things up here. Then pull your squad back to the Iron Mine base. Combat summary. Wipeout at Bloodclaw Canyon. 213 elite troops eliminated. 2,130 XP. 15 knights eliminated. 15 XP. Flawless ambush multiplier. XPX 1.5. Grand total XP. 5,445. Spoils. 3,200 dinars. 30 studded leather sets. 15 additional mounts. 500 units of grain. Leveled up to 4. Strength. 15. Agility. 13. Charisma. 11. Now, for promotion time. Absolutely my favorite part. The system's mount and blade soldier progression unfolded right before my eyes like a magnificent, ultra-violent holiday shopping catalog. 20 fresh recruits advanced to Imperial Infantry. Unlocked basic formations, reinforced leather, and proper shields. 15 footmen upgraded to trained infantry. Equipped chainmail, sturdier shields, and the shield wall tactic. 10 seasoned veterans became senior infantry, gaining scale armor and 3 throwing spears apiece. Ranged opening volleys from your frontline brawlers? Absolutely beautiful. 30 bowmen promoted to veteran archers, complete, with composite bows and bodkin arrows. As the golden upgrade glow finally faded, my ragtag crew of peasants and system troops had morphed into a legit military force. Current dinar balance, 5,870. I kicked off this whole gig with 500 dinars and a hangover. And now I'm sitting on nearly 6,000. An elf alliance, a loyal band of orc warriors, an iron mine, a dead rival lord, 15 fresh mounts, and a battalion that can actually hold a line, without tripping over their own feet. The town drunk in the wine cellar has officially checked out. The Starfaller is open for business. The iron, or veins up in the Frost Whisper Mountains, gleamed a deep crimson in the morning sun. I slapped my hand against a raw deposit like I was catching up with an old pal who happened to be made of cash. The system prompt flashed, red iron deposit, medium quality. Yield, 50 units daily. Labor required, 20 miners. Development cost, 500 dinars. Build it, dinars remaining. 5,370. 4870, close enough. The mine's entrance began expanding all on its own. Wooden support structures shot straight out of the stone, like trees growing on fast forward. Iron tracks and mine carts materialized straight out of thin air. The orc laborers behind me turn an absolute pale shade of green, which is wild considering they're already naturally green, clutching their tusk charms and whispering frantic prayers. Grash covered the situation for me perfectly. This is the Shuayin, Lord's divine sorcery. This is the Blood Scar's new territory. Attaboy Grash. Employee of the month, hands down, every single month. The system then served up housing management options for the orcs. Option 1, labor camp setup. Maximum output, absolute garbage loyalty. Option 2, autonomous tribal village. A tiny dip in productivity, but way more content orcs. I locked in option 2. Happy workers generally don't shank you while you sleep. It's entry-level management theory that literally no one in this medieval world seems to have figured out yet. Round orc. Traditional longhouses began constructing themselves close by, with chimneys venting smoke like a quaint, green suburb. Ethel materialized next to me like a phantom. No footsteps. No sound. Not even a rustled leaf. Elves don't hike. They just pop up in different spots. At different times. Your magic is quite bizarre, she remarked closely, inspecting the auto-generated mine. It didn't harm the roots of the trees. Well, yeah, since my video game style, building magic, doesn't have to wreck anything. The system deploys infrastructure like a surgeon, not a bulldozer. This eco-friendly compliance setup is the ultimate freebie in negotiation history. And Ethel has zero clue. I gestured toward a slope nearby. What if we set up the Silver Pine barracks over there? Near enough for supply lines, yet secluded enough for elven privacy. She agreed. I can train 20 sharpshooters a month, but they must clear fitness checks. A strength rating of 12 minimum. Elven training, camp unlocked. Monthly capacity, 20 Batnian archers. Fee, 50 dinars per recruit. Batnian marksman. On a subscription basis, it's like Christmas every month. During the ride back to the fortress, I pulled up the regional dashboard and instantly regretted it. Total population, 5,000 humans split among 3 hamlets, plus 354 orcs. Food stores, 1,340 units. Good for barely 31 days with winter looming. Tax yields? A measly and pathetic 85 dinars daily because everyone is dead broke. And the trade routes are totally trashed. North Village, 2,000 residents, half the homes torched, severe food deficit. South Village, 1,500 residents, livestock wiped out by natural calamities. And orc pillaging. Creekwood Village, 1,200 residents settled at the edge of the woods, scraping by, but desperately craving iron implements. My land is pretty much a depressing spreadsheet with a mining operation. Tacked on, Edwin cleared his throat. My lord, custom demands that any new ruler must visit the capital to pledge loyalty to the king. Once we prepped for winter, I peered south toward the faraway peaks. Any news from the capital? He pulled out a message with a royal wax seal. It got here this morning. His Majesty is totally shocked by Horns, betrayal, and wants you there in person to explain. Totally shocked, heavy on the air quotes. The king is about as stunned as a cat, acting like it didn't just swipe a vase off the table. Politics never changes, no matter the universe. Get the horses and gear ready. I head out in 3 days with 10 horsemen as escort. Royce and Galvin, you stay behind to watch the fortress. Royce pounded his chest. By my blade, not even a mouse is getting past us. I spent my final day checking on everything. The North Village crops were being resown, and the blacksmith was hammering away. At the drill grounds, elven trainers were fixing the recruits, shooting forms with the patience of saints, but the strictness of drill sergeants. The system layout showed archery skills, shooting up in real time. At this pace, I'd have my first squad of Batavian bowmen ready. By the time I made it back from the capital, my inner gamer was hyped. At dawn on day 3, I set off sporting crisp aristocratic clothes, a deep blue mantle stitched with a soaring silver eagle. 10 riders formed a tight wedge behind me, their hooves sounding sharp in the morning mist. Then travel paths popped up. Route 1, shortcut through the Black Forest. Takes 10 days. 40% risk of raiders or wild beasts. Route 2, take the long way through the River Valley town. A 13-day trading window makes option 2 a no-brainer. My people desperately need food. Saving 3 days is a luxury. As for River Valley, that town is the massive grain hub of the north. Our journey took us from desolate hills into lush, fertile plains. Right around noon on day 2, River Valley town finally materialized on the horizon. It boasted stone walls towering 10 meters high, plus a moat with a drawbridge that seriously never seems to close. Endless merchant caravans were packed at the gates like it was a Black Friday rush. Honestly, this place was disgustingly wealthy compared to my own meager territory. I felt just like a broke kid from the hood, stepping into a rich cousin's massive estate. The marketplace was total chaos, but in the best way. Traders from the south were peddling silk and exotic spices, while northern lords hawked heavy furs and raw minerals. Stationing the cavalry back at the town entrance, I headed toward a grain depot, flanked by 2 guards. Suddenly, a loud racket caught my attention. Account for that missing 30%. A sharp-dressed, middle-aged merchant just slammed a ledger straight into a scrawny guy's face. The poor wretch collapsed right onto his knees in the mud. Sir, I beg you. The spices got soaked during the haul and went completely moldy. The merchant unsheathed a guard's blade, pressing it tightly against the man's neck. I personally went over the cargo hold myself. The waterproof tarps didn't have a single rip in them. Final warning, where's my coin? Just then, a system alert popped up in front of me. Unique character identified, Marco Valandi. Class, Merchant/X-Spice Caravan Leader. Attributes, Eagle Eye, Scam Detection plus 25%. Iron Fist, Minion Loyalty plus 10%. Current status, Handling Theft. Recruitment status, Available. The kneeling culprit finally broke. It was Steward Jerome. He promised me a 10% cut if I cooked the books. Marco instantly knocked him cold with his sword hilt, before the rat could say another word. Sorry about the mess. Marco wiped down his blade with a handkerchief, then caught sight of my nodding, exhausted bow. My lord, if you've got orders, they'll have to wait until I finish cleaning house. I glanced down at the scattered ledger books, red ink circling every single discrepancy, and made my move. How long to get the stolen cash back? His eyes narrowed. What are you getting at, my lord? What's your whole caravan worth right now? I pointed toward the convoy, where a few servants were quietly unhitching horses, trying to flee with the looted goods, traders included. Marco whipped around, saw the rats jumping ship, blew his alarm whistle, and let out a bitter laugh. Looks like I'm either losing everything today or getting a fresh start. I lifted a leather pouch, clinking with gold. I'm buying the whole setup. And that includes you. Keep running it. Swaying. Territory needs a direct trade pipeline to the capital. Marco stared blankly at the gold coins, then booted a fleeing merchant so hard the guy bounced. Deal. On one condition. Let me deal with these parasites myself. Shrieks echoed up from the cargo hold. I didn't go snooping. Plausible deniability is a ruler's greatest asset. Acquired. Damaged caravan X1. Needs 12 pack horses. Gained. Hostile relations with local smuggling syndicate. Unlocked hidden perk. Bloody reckoning. Embezzlement probability minus 90% for the next 3 months. A 90% drop in theft. Turns out the ultimate anti-corruption policy is just letting your new manager beat the greed right out of people with his bare fists. Marco climbed out of the hold, knuckles bloodied, holding a new business pitch. All right then, my lord. Allow me to lay out 3 distinct strategies to get this trade route back on its feet. Walk with me to the grain merchant first. We can chat on the way. Once inside the shop, a chubby-faced grain merchant practically scurried over to us. My lord needs grain? Check out this spring wheat. Flours white as snow, and just 5 coppers a pound. The system automatically converted the local currency. 1 gold piece equals 10 silver, which equals 1,000 copper. 1 dinar equals 1 silver. I'm going to need at least 20,000 pounds to keep my territory fed for the next 3 months. Marco took one quick look at the vendor's grin, then leaned in and whispered, My lord, this fat slob is overcharging us by at least 50%. Marco's trading skill had triggered fraud detection. Actual prices: black bread 0.8 copper/pound. Wheat grain 3.2 copper/pound. Yup, a 50% markup. This swindler spotted a young lord rocking a fancy cloak and figured it was payday. I tapped the counter. Give me a new price. The hefty man's cheeks jiggled. Well, you see, the trade routes have been pretty dangerous lately. I have the price. Records from all 7 of the northern towns. Marco whipped out a ledger from thin air. Last month's data from River Valley Town shows black bread averaged only 0.75 copper per pound. Beads of sweat formed on the merchant's brow. My lords, seriously, 7 sets of reinforced leather armor in exchange for 20,000 pounds of grain. I laid out the terms of the deal. At standard market rates, you still owe me 15 silver. Marco delivered the knockout blow. Or you could just throw in 30 sacks of coarse salt. I couldn't help but notice that sea salt piled up out back. The big guy looked like he was on the verge of tears. We walked out with the entire batch of grain, and the salt for practically half of his opening quote. Marco Valenti, loyalty más 5. Unlocked trait. Penny pincher. Daily expenses reduced by 10%, my lord. Marco wiped his forehead and gestured toward the shimmering waters of Blackwater River. Moving by river is our best bet. We'll have 3 flatboats prepped by tomorrow. It's a 5-day trip to Shuang territory, cutting overland travel time in half, given winter water levels. The Blackwater never completely freezes through the Frost Whisper Gorge stretch. Plus, our iron mine sits right at the upstream bend. He sketched a curve in the air on an imaginary map. I've already touched base with old Captain COR. His crew manages ore shipments all year round, making connections and sorting out logistics like a pro. This guy's been on my payroll for exactly 40 minutes, and he's already outclassing everyone else. Well, except maybe Galvin's talent for screaming at folks. I hired a merchant by purchasing his entire failing enterprise, secured enough grain to ride out the winter, found a direct river route right to my doorstep, and saved half of my shopping budget, all during a single afternoon at a local farmer's market. My lands are gaining an orc neighborhood, an elven archery academy, and an iron mine that practically runs itself. I arrived in this world as a total drunk, and now I'm managing a startup kingdom. The Starfall portfolio is expanding nicely, baby. The Grand Throne. Room reeked of smoky pine resin and political tension. King Augustus VII rested on an iron seat, looking like he'd swallowed a box of hornets for breakfast. Truly sharp and projecting. The kind of raw power that makes grown men completely forget how to stand straight. Horn Greystone is gone, the monarch declared. His head is impaled on a gate spike, and his lands have no successor. He raised a parchment bearing elven moonlight sigils and orc testimonies to review them. His mouth twitched into the royal version of a smirk. The elven silver pine stamp is legitimate, and those elves are far too proud to fabricate lies. That moron. He slammed the scroll onto the armrest. Horn plotted with orcs to raid a noble house, then got himself killed, and now those beasts are pouring across his defenseless borders, plundering everything. I have never witnessed a more brainless aristocrat in my whole time on the throne. The monarch's gaze scanned the hall like high beams. Which of you noble peers wants to claim the Greystone? Land for the realm? Crickets. Just absolute, beautiful, cowardly silence. Every single aristocrat present suddenly found themselves captivated by anything besides the king's facial expression. One count began twiddling with his waist sash, while another developed an intense fascination with a wall tapestry he'd walked past 1,000 times before. Jewel-encrusted footwear shuffled backward. Frontier lords literally ducked behind columns. Frankly, I couldn't blame them. The Greystone region was a total nightmare of a prize. A frozen wasteland, perched on the edge of the Frostwhisper Peaks, with a bitter cold snapped stone. It sits right in the path of the orc invasion route. Every autumn, the green-skinned raiders swarm, in like a recurring subscription to pure violence. 3 separate Greystone lords have been decapitated by orcs over the last decade, their craniums mounted on border watchtowers as grisly decor, accepting that fiefdom meant rebuilding shattered defenses from scratch, soothing terrified homesteaders, and bankrolling a permanent garrison to fight orcs, all for virtually zero financial payoff. These pampered nobles would sooner chew on their boots. Your Majesty, the sable count murmured, cleaning his gold glasses. Given such a crucial outpost, ought to be handed over to someone well-versed in northern warfare. In plain English, not me, literally anyone else. The crowd nodded eagerly, while completely ducking the king's gaze, like he was assigning homework. This was my shot. Your Majesty, I stepped up, keeping my cool. The Blood Scar clan has pledged loyalty to House Shuai by the ancient blood oath. I projected my voice on purpose, making sure every shrinking noble caught it loud and clear. Per Chapter 7 of the St. Eller's Codex, whoever conquers an outsider, clan claims their war banner and lands. Chapter 7. The ancient decree used a century back when holy knights bested the mountain dwarves. Nobody had dug that up in nearly 100 years. I served it up like a fine vintage from a dusty cellar. The old ruler's brows shot up. Fascinating. He rubbed his scepter, glance sweeping over the cowering lords. Looks like none of you have the guts of this young fellow. Facing me, he asked, "You realize what claiming Greystone entails? It adds 30 more miles of front line to protect every single year. It means when orc war drums echo, your fluttering colors must be the first to rise. It means my men will gnaw on frozen rations, while standing waist-deep in snowstorms, watching the border. Pin drop silence. You could hear the logs popping. Then the king burst out, a massive, hearty roar that reverberated off the high ceiling. Hell yes, this is exactly the sort of leader my realm requires. He leaped to his feet. Starting right now, the Greystone title is officially dissolved. Its domain is now placed under Shuai management. Spinning around, he drew an object from a velvet case. An assistant held a case containing a 2-handed greatsword. Its blade was pitch black, save for the razor-sharp edge, which shimmered like captured moonlight, with ancient runes etched right along the spine. Behold the winter's oath, the king proclaimed, his voice turning deep and solemn. Bestowed upon the northern guardian 2 centuries ago. He brandished the weapon, a silver arc catching the firelight. Today, I pass it to you. I dropped down on one knee. The edge tapped my right shoulder. By iron and blood, I, Augustus, 7th ruler of Antor, hereby title you Baron of Frostwhisper. I grant you total rule over the Greystone territory. Then the blade pressed down slightly. Your task, wipe out the northern orcs. The weapon lifted to my left shoulder. Your blade strikes for the realm. Your life bleeds for the realm. The tip grazed my forehead. Now, stand Baron Shuang. Claim your sword and fulfill your vow. Quest log updated. Royal decree. Eradicate orc clans from the Frost Whisper Mountains. Deadline, January 3rd. Restore northern trade routes. Quarterly tribute, 20% of iron mine profits. 20%. The king. Just taxed my mind before I've even started digging. A monarchy is pretty much just a protection racket with fancier hats. But hey, I strolled in as a broke heir and walked out a baron owning 2 territories, a legendary blade, an official order to smash some orc teeth in. Not a bad haul for a guy who was passed out under a wine barrel just last week. 3 days after the knighting, I hit up the capital's blacksmith quarter with 23 sets of looted armor, piled onto a wagon. A dwarf smith named Grom Iron Anvil. Since pretty much every dwarf smith answers to a name like that. Wrapping his knuckles on a breastplate, Schwein, kid. These scrap iron chunks are too trashy even for goblins. I nudged the bottom pile with my boot. The horn set with a personal guard emblem. This right here is forged from Blackwater Valley steel. Grom's eyes flashed as he pulled open the plating, running his fingers over the dried blood on the lining. Huh, thought I caught a whiff of something familiar. He buried his snout right into the gear and took a deep breath. Blackwater Valley, or has a trace of sulfur in it. Reeks of rotten eggs during the smelt. This guy literally just snuffed out the source of the metal. Dwarves are just built different. 15 gold. My final offer for all 23. I flash 2 fingers. Make it 20 gold, and you throw in that helper. Currently chugging your brew. Smash. A wine cask crashed over in the back, and a soot-stained young dwarf came stumbling out, a half-drained bottle, still swinging from his belt. Ugh, master. I swear I didn't mean to Grindin. Stealing my ale again. Grom's thunderous roar rattled every single piece of hanging metalwork like wind chimes caught in a full-blown hurricane. Looks like my new workshop needs a quality control tester. I chipped in nonchalantly. A quarter hour later, my coach had picked up a passenger, a dwarven apprentice mounted on a goat, clinging to a liquor flask and grumbling. You could have at least let me grab my gear, secure myself a smith for 20 gold coins, plus the pure comedy of watching a master craftsman try not to weep as his beer pinching protege trotted off on farm animal. Total win. As my carriage rolled through the gates of the capital, a crew of high and mighty aristocrat boys were trotting back from a hunt, decked out in golden silk coats, ornamental swords that had never touched an actual battlefield, a couple of measly hairs hanging from their saddles. Well, look who it is, our brand new Baron Schwei, the ringleader, some Derlin family golden boy with gorgeous locks, mockingly dragged out my title like a complete joke. I hear even the local goblins on his land need triple-layered coats just to step outside. His buddies burst into incredibly dramatic laughter. One pinched his nose and began fanning himself with a fancy silk handkerchief. I bet banquets at Snow Eagle Castle served nothing but frozen spuds and decade-old pickled orc meat. The system brought up their backgrounds right away. Trust fund, noble heirs from wealthy southern provinces. The exact kind of boys whose daddies made massive bribes to the throne, just so their golden boys could party in the capital, rather than grinding out on the dangerous front lines. Yonder Lin, I muttered with a freezing smirk. Word is your old man dropped 300 gold dragons to buy your way out of the border garrison. Do tell, do you still have nightmares about those freezing nights back at Northwind Fortress? The ones where grunts routinely lost digits to frostbite. His face turned completely pale, white as a sheet. His grip on the reins tightened so hard that his knuckles bleached to match. Oh, he definitely remembered those icy nights. My carriage kept on rolling, leaving their sputtered insults choking in the dust. Grundin slammed his beer down and slurred. What gives those soft-bellied wimps the right to look down on us folks from the north? I squeezed the hilt of Winter's Oath, making the leather grip groan under my fingers, because all they know is the capital's tunes and balls. My gaze drifted toward the jagged mountain outlines on the northern skyline. They don't realize that it's northern steel and sacrifice that keeps the royal court safe, smelling of sweet mead and fragrances, rather than orc campfires across 2 lands. A fable blade, an elven pact, an orc horde, a traitor, a dwarf, and a one-eyed psycho. Baron Schwein is finally returning, and winter is approaching. But this time around, winter should be terrified of me. My breath formed pale, misty plumes as I glanced back at our caravan. 2 wagons stacked like sandus, sleighs plowed through the fresh powder, drivers wrapped in fur coats urging tired horses forward. 10 light horsemen guarded us, split between front and rear, and Grindin, my newly recruited dwarf, was curled up on the largest wagon, clutching his jug of booze like a teddy bear, fast asleep. His goat, hitched to the back of the wagon, was casually chewing on dead grass like it was a holiday. The freight setup was pretty interesting. Wagon 1, an expert dwarf anvil, complete smithing tools, and a portable bellows. Forge occupying half the ride. Wagon 2, quenching oil, sharpening stones, and 2 kegs of booze that Grindin insisted he absolutely needed to ensure top-notch smithing work. He claimed that with a straight face, totally hammered. Move it, I shouted out. We gotta make it to Creekwood Village before nightfall. My lord, smoke ahead. The scout in front gestured toward the tree line. I narrow my eyes, and the system map automatically zoomed in. The layout of a small outpost popped up, but instead of showing a town name, the indicator was blinking refugee camp. Verota closer. About 20 shanties built from branches, and shredded tarps were packed into a forest opening. Emaciated kids were stirring a massive cauldron over a fire. I peeked inside that pot and nearly choked up. This broth was so watered down you could see your reflection in it. Just a handful of wheat grains, along with bits of tree bark floating in boiling water. Calling that food is a joke. It's just a lukewarm apology. Total population found, 87. Available workforce among refugees, 32. An elderly man hobbled over to us using a cane, his face scarred by frostbite and eyes full of sheer desperation. "My lord," he pleaded, "we just need somewhere to last through the winter. Where you guys from?" "Mill Village, within the Greystone territory." He hacked violently, like his lungs were trying to burst right out. "Orcs torched the whole place after Lord Horn passed away. Nobody gave a damn about us Horn loyalists. This is the land I just took over. These people are my subjects. Now, and here they are, eating tree bark broth out in the freezing snow." I got off my horse, my boots sinking deep into the sludge. "I am Richard Schwein, the new ruler of the Greystone domain." The old-timer's clouded eyes went wide before he broke into another cough. "Wait, do you mean from the Frost Whisper Peaks all the way to the Blackwater River? It's all under my rule now." I flashed the brand-new Greystone crest engraved on my scabbard, letting my eyes scan across every hollow face, peering out from those miserable makeshift tents. "As your liege, it is my responsibility to protect my people." A woman missing her front teeth spoke up timidly. "Does that mean Mill Village will be built back up?" "Eventually, but surviving winter comes first. You're all relocating to Creekwood Village. Proper houses, plenty of firewood, and actual food. Anyone who works will eat well. The kids and the elderly get taken care of first." "My lord, is this for real?" "Lord Horn never. I am not Horn." That shut down any comparisons real quick. The Schwein family always honors its word. I gave a nod to my riders. Sacks of grain were unsealed, and bread was handed out. "Feed the children and the seniors first. Pack up before nightfall. I'm bringing you home." The old man fell straight to his knees, but I hauled him right back up and handed him a loaf myself. Kneeling out in the snow, at his age, would easily finish him off way faster than hunger. Just like that, we added 87 folks to our already sluggish caravan. Our speed dropped from careful to a literal crawl, and right then, the system chose to completely wreck my night. Scout warning, Frost Whisper Wolf Pack, 20 to 30 targets. Range, 1.5 kilometers. Closing in. I opened up the system interface map, overhead view. Over 20 red indicators traveling through the western woods, moving in a predatory setup, flanking us and cutting us off, spurred on by winter starvation and the scent of our mounts. Quick status evaluation. Available dinars at 1,370. Alert. Currently outside human territory boundaries. Unable to call units. Cannot request backing. No panic button here, just myself, 10 mounted soldiers, a few displaced trackers, and a wasted dwarf matching up against 30 starving beasts. Fantastic. Predators inbound. Everyone get behind the wagons. Seniors and kids in the center. The riders quickly formed a guard wall, lances extended. The trackers among the displaced grabbed their longbows. The rest of the crowd held up embers and anything they could swing around. Grinda managed to sober up in roughly a split second. He leaped straight off the wagon, his heavy hammer twirling in his grip in a flawless loop. Bloody winter beasts knew they'd track us down. Glowing eyes materialized along the dimming tree boundary. Pairs of them, scores of them. Deep growls reverberating out from every angle. I pulled back the heavy recurved bow and took a breath. The freezing breeze honed my focus like a sharpening stone. A silver snout emerged from the brush. I loosed the string, shot straight through the neck. One down, then the horde rushed. 3 predators closing from 3 separate angles. Simultaneously, triple release. 3 shafts fired almost instantaneously. 3 targets, 3 strikes, 3 bodies dropping into the drift. Holy gods above. A local tracker watched on, completely struck dumb. Check out that shooting. Grinned and crushed and airborne. Beast head with his mallet and roared with laughter. That's what I'm talking about. Except my gaze was already fixed on a real threat. An enormous white wolf lurking behind the pack. Easily a head taller than the others. Bossing them around like some furry general. Elite unit. Frost Whisper, White Wolf Alpha. A snowy boss fight against a beast with actual tactics. I yanked an armor-piercing arrow from my belt. Choke on this. The white wolf sidestepped. Insanely fast, but the shaft still clipped its front leg. Blood splattered across the pristine snow like crimson paint on a blank canvas. It howled, but instead of backing off, its fur bristled, spine arched, exposing every single fawn. This monster was pissed, not panicked. Then it pulled a move that made me seriously respect a quadraped. It feinted left. I loosed my arrow at that left dodge, but it instantly cut back right. The arrow sliced through empty air. Clever little devil, I muttered. Fine. Two can play at mind games. I intentionally slowed down my movements, making myself look totally vulnerable. Come on, take the bait. And the white wolf did. It lunged through the air, jaws wide open, four-legged death flying straight at my face. Just what I was waiting for. Lightning fast draw, third arrow. Right down its gaping, mawing out the back of its skull. Alpha down. The pack's morale instantly shattered. Asterisk looted. Perfect white wolf pelt X1, rare, asterisk the surviving. Wolves bolted into the woods, terrified their chief. Just got snuffed mid. Air with an arrow for a tongue piercing. Grundon smashed the final straggler and let out a joyful roar. Dwarves and ultraviolets. Name a more iconic duo. Skin the carcasses. I ordered the hunters. We need winter gear for the kids. I paused, glancing over at the refugees, gazing longingly at the dead wolves and the meat. It's a banquet tonight. Snagged high-grade wolf hides X15. Fresh wolf meat X 800 pounds. New achievement unlocked. Frost Whisper Hunter beast damage plus 10%. 87 displaced folks who were choking down bark. Stew this morning. We're now gearing up for a wolf barbecue tonight. Man, life hits you quick. When you're rolling with the Starfaller, let's roll. Gotta reach Creekwood Village before nightfall. The setting sun cast a golden glow over everything as we finally caught sight of the village barricade. Locals came rushing out carrying torches. The elderly village elder spotted my emblem and damn near dropped. My lord, praise the heavens you're unharmed. I helped them up. These travelers need shelter. Throw open the storehouse tonight. Let's give everyone a grand feast. 2 lands, 1 mythic blade, 87 brand new subjects, 15 wolf pelts, 800 pounds of fresh meat. A dwarven smith who's already sneaking more booze. Plus I sniped a wolf straight through its jaws, while it was leaping right at my face. Just a typical Tuesday for Baron Schwein. Gleam of the bonfire, wolf meat crackling. Children with some actual color in their faces. For the first time in God knows how long. For roughly 5 minutes, things felt pretty peaceful. Then the elder limped over to totally kill the vibe. Sire, with all these extra mouths to feed, we won't survive until springtime. I gestured toward the interface maps. New timbering zones go live tomorrow. Every able-bodied person splits into 3 teams. One builds out the settlement, one logs up north, and the last group joins me to clear the path to the iron mine. But what about the orcs? The Bloodscar clan answers to me now. Rash will deploy fighters to watch over the logging crews. The old guy's eyes practically popped out of his skull. Teaming up with orcs beats starving to death in the dead of winter. Believe me, he definitely didn't look convinced. Then again, he didn't exactly have a backup plan. Which brings us to right now. I pulled an all-nighter pulling system data solo. Super productive, totally quiet. Pretty much relaxing, until daybreak hit. Bam bam. Loud pounding on my door. My lord, an emergency. A scout stands there, white as a sheet. The morning patrol spotted massive ORC prints. Right at the edge of the Black Forest. Count is 200 minimum, marching from Greystone. I bolted upright as the interface map automatically popped up. Red dots, tons of freaking red dots. Swarming out of the woods from the Greystone flank. Scout warning, Blood Spear tribe invaders. Quantity, 200 danger. High vector. Creekwood Village, a completely different clan. Not my usual Bloodscar crew. An entirely separate gang, known as the Blood Spears. And they're heading straight toward this town, packed with refugees, kids, and one incredibly stressed-out Baron. Damn it, this is exactly what you get when you inherit a dead trader's land. All the baggage just transfers over with the title. Appreciate it, Horn. Even from a grave, you're still screwing with me. Time for fast choices. No room to freak out. Ignite the beacons. Get the fortress back up on the move. Rally every last villager for a stand. Flank with the horsemen. Place the marksman up high. Get the swiftest messenger out to the iron mine. Order Grash to mobilize his fighters immediately. The village elder staggered up to me, shaking like a leaf. My lord, we won't clear everyone out in time. We aren't running. I flashed a grim smirk. We settle this right here. Then I made a terrible financial decision. System, draft 50 Imperial footmen. 30 Imperial archers, run 50 by 40. 30 by 30 totals up to 2,900 dinars. Current dinars, 1,370. Debt, 1,530. Warning, Daily interest at 5%. Troops dropped 2 morale daily while in debt. I just took out a predatory loan from a gaming system to fund an army. They're charging me 5% daily on fake medieval cash. Pretty sure this straight up breaks the Geneva Convention of Game Design. Where's the Consumer Protection Bureau? For Ice Sky protagonists, anyway. Still, 50 heavy infantry and 30 archers just spawned at the village gate. Studded leather, longbows, ready for war. The villagers fell to their knees. The gods have answered. Well, sure. The gods, and also my credit score, which is officially tanked now. Infantry, hold the village entrance. Archers, hit the watchtowers now. I scrambled up the windmill roof. The absolute best vantage point in town. The orc army was swarming across the frozen river like a dark green tide. Vanguard units wore looted iron armor, wielding heavy axes and spike clubs. Behind them came wave after wave. 200 pissed-off orcs rushing a wooden village, defended by a crew I bought on a payday loan. Archers ready. I drew the Shui hunting bow. Aim for the unarmored targets. The system's aim assist locked on. The first orc scout breached our range. Arrow dropped. Clean shot to the throat. Dead before hitting the dirt. Didn't even manage a screech. First blood. Morale più cinque. The Imperial archers let loose a volley. A rain of arrows blanketed the orc vanguard. But these guys weren't soft targets. Only a few of them went down. Those armored tanks kept rushing us like green freight trains. Brief panic broke out within the orc ranks. But they rallied in seconds and pressed the assault. The village's wooden palisade shuddered from the impact. Like a flimsy fence caught in a hurricane. I locked my sights on high-value targets. Every single arrow struck exposed throats or eyes. The system's aim assist was working into overdrive, and my maxed archery stat was definitely paying off. But we were overwhelmed, and the wall finally gave way. A massive section just totally collapsed. Green-skinned warriors flooded through the breach, howling bloodthirsty battle cries, slamming head-on into my frontline infantry. Shield wall. 30-foot soldiers locked shields. The collision felt like a car wreck in slow motion. Steel clashed on steel, bodies slammed, grunting and roaring. Cavalry flanked charge. My 10 light horsemen ambushed from the side at a full gallop. Lances leveled the charge. Buff turned these lightly armored riders into lethal missiles. Spears impaled right through orc chests. Archers maintained heavy fire into the melee, sniping whatever targets they could find. Still, the battlefield became a total meat grinder. Here's the brutal reality. My infantry are only tier 2. Their basic leather armor was basically wet paper. Against heavy orc cleavers, the archers, simple hunting bows couldn't reliably pierce armored orcs. I was deploying a budget squad against a premium threat, and the math was definitely not in my favor. Hold the line. I bellowed down from the rooftop. Keep that shield wall up. 40 infantrymen formed a makeshift dam, desperately trying to hold back the tide. Splitting, bending, barely clinging on. I locked my aim assist onto a shouting orc. Warlord, sending an arrow straight through his visor. He dropped flat like a sack of green potatoes. Additional orcs trampled over his corpse without missing a beat. These dudes straight up use their dead as stepping stones. Zero respect, maximum efficiency. My lord, breach on the east side. I whipped around. 5 or 6 orcs had busted through the front line. 2 militia heads went flying, literally airborne from those axe swings. 3 arrows, 3 orcs. Instant pushback. But I was basically playing whack-a-mole with a bow, against an army of 200 creatures, and these moles were packing war axes. Then, an absolute unit of an orc charged the windmill's base, and slammed his axe deep into the main support beam. The entire structure shuddered. I nearly wiped out right off the roof. This monster was trying to chop down my sniper perch. While I was still on it, he smirked up at me, with a mug only an orc mother could love, winding up the axe for another go. One more chop, and I'd be riding this building down, like a collapsing Jenga tower. Twip, a silver flash. The orc froze mid-swing. An ivy-wrapped arrow was protruding right from its throat. I recognized that arrow. Looks like you need a hand, human. That chilling, elegant voice echoed from the village entrance. Silver hair gleaming in the firelight. Emerald eyes flashing, with a precise brand of arrogance that only elves can pull off. Althea, and if she's arrived, the Silver Pine Cavalry is bound to be close behind. Never in my life have I been so damn glad to see a condescending immortal. Across 2 worlds, loan sharks are pounding on my door. My vantage point is giving out. My forces are breaking down, and I'm knee-deep against 200 orcs in a battle I can scarcely afford. Then the elves just rocked up, looking like the finest, most critical backup in military history. I'll take the attitude. Honestly, give me all that attitude. Just don't stop firing, Ethel. She strolled right in with 20 Batanian archers, as if she were turning up, fashionably late to some fancy dinner party, rather than an active war zone. These Batanian fighters moved completely in sync, and every single shot found its mark. An Orc commander decked out in full heavy armor swung his axe to spearhead a massive charge. 3 arrows instantly pierced his neck, underarm, and the back of his knee all at once. He went down like somebody just pulled his plug. Ethel leaped onto the rooftop, right beside me, with the effortless grace of a cat that absolutely knows it's better than you. Her bright green eyes scanned the entire battlefield, like she was sizing up a pretty subpar dining experience. Our reckless lord certainly loves getting himself into tight spots, she remarked, drawing her bow. A solitary, silver, radiant arrow drilled straight through 2 orc skulls, with a single release. A 2-for-1. Show off. I put an arrow through a flanking orc's throat, and yelled, "How did you guys get here so fast?" I was leading the Batanian archers through the woods for a routine field training drill. She countered, saving a militia guy mid-sentence, without missing a single beat. Real combat is far more educational than target practice. She literally brought her elite hit squad into my war zone, just to let them practice. This is basically a pop quiz. I'm literally fighting for my life while they do schoolwork. Suddenly, a deep horn echoed from the north, and the system interface flooded with green blips. Friendly green blips, it's Grash. An equerry bellowed. Orc reinforcements. The townsfolk turned white with absolute dread. 50 fully armed orcs came barreling toward the settlement. Yet, rather than blitzing mankind, these beasts smashed right into the Bloodspear marauders, just like a massive emerald wrecking ball. Slamming into a green wall, Grash spearheaded the assault, wielding Gruul's gargantuan battle axe, carving out shimmering silver arcs. He cleaved 2 marauder heads wide open on his very first swing. For the swaying lord, he bellowed in butchered human speech. The Bloodscar combatants jumped into the fray. The human soldiers' morale skyrocketed. Meanwhile, the invading orcs, seriously, never anticipated getting backstabbed by their own kind. Their defensive line shattered like cheap glassware. All units assault. Push them back. The infantry shield wall surged onward, while the cavalry flanked them from both sides. Batavian marksmen kept up a relentless, lethal downpour. From above, Grash's shock troops sliced straight through the enemy's core, like a hot blade through butter. The tables had turned, and right then, a moment happened that made me burst out laughing. A squad of Bloodspear orcs managed to push through the volley of arrows, grinning widely as they lunged right at the Britannian bowmen. An easy target, wouldn't you say? Just fragile, unarmored archers. Basically free kills. Nope, dead wrong. The frontline Britannian rangers sheathed their ranged weapons and unsheathed blades in one seamless motion. 10 massive, 2-handed greatswords materialized out of thin air. The foremost orc didn't even process what hit him before. A Batavian combatant slipped past his heavy lunge and ripped his torso open with a swift backhand slash. Another orc brought down his axe, but the Batavian parried it effortlessly, totally unfazed. Then, flashed the steel and took the orc's head right off. Haha, I seriously couldn't stop myself. Dio, do you even know what a Britannian sword saint is? Grash was standing right by me, watching these archers butcher orcs in close-quarters combat, like they were just chopping up veggies. Pointing his thick green finger at the slaughter, he asked, "Are they archers or berserkers?" Ethel gave her blade an elegant spin, impaling the throat of the last orc charging her, and muttered with a totally deadpan face, "Back in the Silverpine clan, we just call that a well-rounded education." Giving Grash a pat on the shoulder, I said, "Next time, make sure to remind your boys. Never mess with archers packing greatswords." Grash just scratched his head. "Yeah, I think I'll give him a wide berth." The fight quickly turned into a total blowout. Squeezed between my foot soldiers, Grash's braves, and 20 Batavian killing machines. The Bloodspear raiders completely broke down. Some ditched their gear and bolted, only for elven arrows to pin them to the dirt. Others went ballistic and charged, but got shredded on the spot. I booted up the system's Orcish translator. "Surrender, and you live." The nearest orc dropped his axe and took a knee. It started a chain reaction, and 60-odd survivors hit the deck in a matter of seconds. Guess peer pressure works on every species. Scanning the battlefield, it was wall-to-wall bodies with my XP counter ticking like crazy, and troop masteries absolutely skyrocketing. Clean this up. Tonight we feast. The townsfolk erupted in cheers. Meanwhile, the Batavian troops casually put away their blades, slung their bows right back on, and looked around like they just finished a brisk jog. The York bloodbath didn't even seem to register on their hype radar. Later that night, the craziest feast in history went down. Humans, orcs, and elves all chilled by the same bonfires, splitting barbecued meat and beers. 3 factions that would usually slaughter each other on sight were casually breaking bread together. I chilled near the flames, taking in the absolute best sight in any RPG. The HP Regan screen. My faction troops possessed a broken perk. Provided they didn't flatline on the field, they recovered at a supernatural pace. Gashes sealed right before my eyes, shattered bones snapped back. A grunt whose breastplate got split by a battle axe. Just 2 hours back was now sitting upright, chugging broth and hyped up, acting out the brawl for his buddies. Moments ago, he was a goner. Now, he's putting on a drama show. Royce watched a practically dead fighter get up and start loosening up. It's like the god of war personally blessed them. If they breathe, they can lock in again. I just shrugged like it was no big deal, and not some reality-bending exploit. Standard militaries need weeks of downtime after combat. Mine just needs a quick nap. This perk alone unlocked endless blitz campaigns. That would make any high-ranking general cry tears of jealousy. Available squads. Imperial Infantry, 45 total. 42 active, 3 critical. Full rest, 12 hours. Imperial Archers, 20 total. 18 active, 2 critical. Full rest, 8 hours. Imperial Cavalry, 10 total. 8 active, 2 critical. 8-hour recovery for the Batavian Archers. 20 in total, all 20 completely fine. That's 20 Batavians and 0 casualties. They literally made it through a whole battle without taking a single scratch. These units are totally broken, and I love it. I stood straight up and began barking orders. Crash. March your men back to the iron mine at first light. Secure that perimeter. The mine cannot be lost. Royce gave a firm chest thump. Leave 5 horsemen and 10-foot soldiers behind to reinforce the local militia. Once healed up, the wounded will join the garrison. The village elder was practically shaking with relief. My lord, with these fighters staying back, we can finally get some rest at night. Your own people need to learn how to fight, too. Every male 16 and older gets drills every 3 days. Ethel was leaning back against a massive oak, her silver hair shimmering in the firelight. You're planting these troops like seeds, aren't you? A single grain of wheat yields a whole harvest later. I watched the village safety rating upgrade from fragile to rock solid right on the system app. The next time bandits try raiding any of my lands, they'll run into iron hedgehogs instead of easy prey. Ethel glanced over at the injured troops, who were already up and moving around. Their healing speed is honestly insane. Just ancient medical arts of the Shuayang family. I said it with a completely straight face. It's the same old lie I keep using, mostly because nobody can ever disprove it. Over in the corner, a guard whose breastplate had been sliced wide open was sitting upright, showing off some battle techniques to his buddies. Barely 2 hours ago, he was near death. Now he's running a drill. Unbelievable. Mun. The village elder brought over some honey mead, looking quite anxious. My lord, those green guys. I mean, the newcomers, they won't. They aren't like those raiders, right? Your hunters and the mountain bandits both walk on 2 legs. Does that make them identical? Fair point. He conceded with a nod, taking a massive gulp of the drink. Before the campfires burned out, I rounded up my guards and began the journey back to Snow Eagle Castle. Staying behind wasn't an option. There was too much to oversee and too many looming dangers. Sire, the looted orc gear has been packed up. The cavalry captain announced. 10 undamaged iron armor sets are put aside, just as you requested. I gave a nod as the system upgrade menu popped up, almost mocking me. Available upgrades. Infantry. Trained infantry, 35 units. Archers. Trained archers, 20 units. Cavalry. Heavy cavalry, 10 units. Battanian warriors to Battanian heroes, 20 units. Insufficient dinars. Gee, thanks. Thanks for the reality check. I'm still broke from summoning those emergency reinforcements. Even this system tax on interest. I actually owe money to a game mechanic. Talk about hitting rock bottom across 2 separate realities. Grundon rode up on his goat, reeking of alcohol and old metal. Boss, about those damaged iron suits. Melt them down, and I can craft 50 top-tier wood-cutting axes. No, sell them to the trade caravans from the south. We need liquid cash. The dwarf's eyes went wide. But that's high-grade steel, and we're short on rations and garments. The realm is currently facing a 30% supply shortage. His expression collapsed, looking like I just told him to dump gold right into a river. For a dwarf, trading quality steel is practically a war crime. But the Starfaller isn't fueled by pride. The Starfaller runs purely on logistics. And right now, supply chain logic dictates. Sell the gear, stock up on grain, settle the debt, and pray the next horde of orcs holds off until my credit rating bounces back. Omans, orcs, elbas, Vatanian sword masters, a wasted dwarf riding a goat, plus a system that bleeds me with interest. This whole realm-building sim is easily the most stressful RPG I have ever dealt with, and there isn't even a pause button. As Snow Eagle Castle came into view, I instantly spotted far more sentries patrolling the battlements. Then when I departed, new ballista stations, crisp banners, looks like Royce didn't slack off. The gates ground open as troops formed up to welcome me, as though I were returning from a campaign, which, technically speaking, I was. Twice over, in fact, Royce strode down the stairwell. The guy had definitely thinned out. His eyes were deeply sunken, yet his stare remained sharp enough to slice iron. He'd been managing this stronghold on absolute zero sleep and sheer intensity. Welcome back, my lord. Defensive wall upgrades were finalized yesterday. I clapped his shoulder. Excellent work. Briefing room, 60 minutes. The command hub had received quite a facelift during my absence. The hearth was blazing, with tactical maps spiked to the tabletop by iron spikes, and supply tokens scattered everywhere. It finally resembled a legitimate headquarters, rather than a lounge, where some drunkard used to sob into his goblet. Let's check the ledger first. I gestured to Edwin. The elderly steward unfurled a parchment of freshly dried ink. Sire, spanning the last 3 weeks, the metalworks have yielded a reliable income stream, bringing in 2 gold pieces per day. The underground forge has cooked the books. Just pure figures, total revenue. 420 gold, expenditures. 310 gold, leaving a net of 110 gold. His skeletal finger pointed directly at the war budget line, mostly for setting up crossbows and beefing up the north wall. My own interface displayed 2,620 dinars. Edwin completely missed the orc loot I sold along the way. A sweet little bonus tucked away in my pocket. We have a 3-month supply of rations, but since winter is coming, we gotta prepare for the worst. I shifted focus to Royce's defenses. The absolute unit of a man stepped up to the tactical table, looking like he was set to give a lecture on organized slaughter. Logistical update. The ramparts are fixed, along with 2 new archer posts. His pointer skedaddled across the scale model of the fortress. The trench is dredged and packed with spikes at the bottom. I spotted some tiny red markers on the sand display, indicating a triple-layer defensive strategy. His baton gestured toward the mountain defile. Tier 1, advanced scout stationed in the brush, tracking orc hostiles. Any movement sets off beacon fires. The pointer shifted to the outer boundary line. Tier 2, the integrated village guard system. Every settlement provides 30 drilled guardsmen, led by a pair of mounted horsemen. The stick wrapped the citadel. Tier 3, the main stronghold itself, featuring upgraded guard towers and a reinforced gateway. Royce whipped up a solid multi-layer defense while I was gone. This guy seriously needs a bump in pay. Make that multiple bumps, all of them. As for losses, 8 fatalities and 15 severely hurt. Over a fortnight, every single casualty has bounced back for duty. Just 8 deaths in 2 weeks. Right on a frontier zone plagued by constant orc raids. Honestly, that low body count was a total miracle. And we both knew the truth. The system's insane magical healing was the only reason. Any regular army would have lost triple that head count. Galvin grabbed a cup and downed the whole thing. The Iron Mine camp fought off a raid yesterday. Those Bloodscar warriors did great. Maybe too great, Royce muttered, clearing his throat. They stuck the raiders' heads right on fence posts. Now the new refugees are terrified to even go near the mines. My mouth twitched. Classic scare tactics. Are they effective? Totally. Good for PR? Not a chance. Tell Grash to ditch the trophies and bury them next time. Turning to Marco, I asked, how about the trade routes? My newly appointed merchant officer whipped out a leather ledger, like it was some sacred text. 3 routes are up and running. The most lucrative one handles iron goods heading south. The ore quality from Greystone is even better than we anticipated. I raised an eyebrow. Greystone iron? Yes, my lord. Marco's eyes practically flashed with pure merchant greed. Thanks to the royal decree, you hold full legal jurisdiction over every inch of Horn's old territory. I deployed scouts. There are 6 mine shafts, 3 of which are fully operational. The system map expanded, and the Greystone region lit up with 6 clearly marked ore deposits. Bright as day. One was flagged as refined iron, stuff worth 3 times the usual rate. Iron Horn, you pathetic backstabber. You accidentally gifted me a total gold mine. Well, an iron mine. Same difference. As for the miners, Marco dropped his voice. They're mostly slaves, prisoners of war, and indentured farmers. Roughly 200 people, 200 experienced miners. An entire skilled workforce served to me on a silver platter. But slavery? Absolutely not. Aside from it being completely repulsive, slaves are terrible workers when you whip them. Folk with slow minds need motivation. Smart minds grasp basic economics. A concept every fantasy villain somehow misses. Ready a carriage. We head for Greystone at first light. Royce, grab 20 cavalrymen. Escort Marco. Outline a modest liberation strategy. Incredibly generous of you, my lord. Marco bowed, though he hesitated. But setting 200 slaves free instantly could spark riots. I've already got that covered. Declare that all slaves are now contract workers. A 5-year agreement, with pay tied to performance. After 5 years, they get full freedom and a small plot of land. Marco's eyes lit up. Brilliant, ensuring both order and productivity. With a single stroke, his quill was scratching the ledger. Even before I finished speaking, I'll draft the agreements right away. A dawn ride in tight formation. 20 horsemen. Greystone Fortress came into view under the afternoon sun. Vastly larger than Snow Eagle Castle. Fresh blood still stained the ramparts. The watchtowers were heavily damaged. Orcs raided this spot too, Royce remarked, inspecting the gashes on the fortifications. We pulled up at the drawbridge. The gates were locked, with shadows shifting along the battlements. Open up, Royce roared. By royal decree, Baron Schwing is here to claim leadership over this domain. Silence. A long, terribly awkward silence. The kind where you can actually hear your horse breathing. Finally, a raspy voice yelled from above. Show me proof. Royce hoisted the officially sealed parchment, like he was flashing a hall pass. To some paranoid teacher, the gates groaned open, and a stooped old man shuffled out with a few guards. I'm Casper, the caretaker of Greystone Fortress. He sized me up, with the distrust of a man who's been lied to. By professionals for decades. Ever since Lord Horn passed, I've managed the estate. He scanned the royal emblem, his hands shaking. It's legit. He handed back the paper, his voice sounding like gravel grinding together. Come with me, sire. Take me to the vault. Skip the small talk, and no tours. Cash first. A glimpse of sheer panic hit Casper's face. Gone in a flash, but too slow. Old-timer, I saw that. My lord, you must be exhausted from the road. Perhaps unwind first. He gulped hard. Right. This way, your lordship. Down through gloomy halls and into the basement. 3 heavy iron doors, 3 different keys. Talk about dramatic build-up. The final door creaked open to reveal nothing. The vault was just a depressing, echoing cavern, holding a few pitiful sacks of coins in the corner. A space meant to hold massive wealth. Packing pretty much zero zilch. This is Horn's vault, Roy gaped, looking like someone had swapped his steak for a napkin. Casper's Adam's apple twitched. Lord Horn maintained a rather lavish lifestyle. Oh, totally. Lavish is one way to put it. Crooked, money-laundering trader, who stashed his real fortune elsewhere fits a lot better. I gave a cold smirk, because the system map was pinpointing something. Casper desperately wanted to keep hidden. A secret corridor right behind the western wall. I strode directly to the bricks, and began knocking on the stonework with my fingertips. Talp, talp, with every thump, draining whatever color was left from Casper's face. My lord, what are you doing? Oh, Casper. Poor, sweaty, anxious Casper. Did you seriously think you could hide the real loot from a guy who's got a cheat code? An X-ray map hardwired right into his brain. Let's find out what's behind door number 4. I struck a stone brick on the wall, not out of anger, but because the system map flagged it as a secret. Click, gears ground together, and the whole wall parted like some ancient elevator door, uncovering a pitch-black corridor. Casper's face went from ghostly pale to totally transparent. His legs gave out, and he collapsed to the floor like a sack of guilty potatoes. Grabbing a torch, I stepped inside. What I saw made everyone behind me draw a sharp breath. The concealed vault was crammed with dark red metal bars. Hundreds of them, radiating an eerie, blood-hued glow under the firelight. This wasn't normal iron. This was something else entirely. I lifted one bar, way heavier than standard iron. The surface bore patterns resembling actual biological veins, as if the metal were alive. Then, the system analysis popped up. Bloodsteel element breakdown. Iron, 78.5%. Chromium, 12.3%. Unidentified substance, 9.2%. Hardness, plus 35%. Toughness, plus 20%. Corrosion resistance, plus 50%. Special weapons crafted from this material showcase blood, vein motifs, morale intimidation più 10%. A mythical supermetal that is harder, more durable, rust-proof, and creates weapons so terrifying that they debuff the enemy's resolve just by existing. Horn was literally sitting on a gold mine. Nope, a blood gold mine valued way beyond mere gold. Casper was completely melting into a puddle on the floor, cold sweat totally drenching his collar. My lord, Horn found out that weapons forged from this specific metal never actually rust. On the black market, just a single blood steel blade could pull in. I tuned him out completely, since I just caught sight of ledger books in the corner. I flipped one open. Page 1. Month 3. Supplied 30 battle axes to the orcs. Got 60 slaves back in return. Oh, and page 2. Month 5. Mine shaft collapse. 15 miners trapped inside. 0 survival effort. Page 3. Month 7. Bribe border patrol captain. Cost 100 gold pieces. And then, the very last page. The exact one that made me absolutely see red. Clandestine pact with Blood Scar, Chieftain Grohl. Provide 100 weapons in exchange for a raid on Shuai territory. There it stood, in black ink on yellowed paper. The definitive paper trail of my father's assassination. Horn armed those orcs. Horn pointed them right at my home. Horn had my father butchered. So that's how it went down. My voice sounded icy enough to freeze the torchlight solid. Horn exploited orc slaves for mining and bartered weapons to get even more slaves. But why go after Shuai territory in particular? It wasn't me, my lord. Casper lunged straight for my boots, bawling and blubbering all over them. I was merely the ledger keeper. Lord Horn claimed Baron Albert. Your dad might have caught wind of the mine and the orc trades. So he had to be. Marco swung his boot, slamming it right into Casper's ribs. You absolute beasts. Casper went skittering across the floor, just like a human bowling ball, and slammed right into the wall. I could be of use to you. He pointed a trembling finger toward a small iron chest. Cash. All the cash is locked in there. Horn shipped a portion to the capital every month, straight into a finance minister's private vault. But the most crucial intel is still right here. Royce grabbed the old-timer by his collar and hoisted him up like a soggy rag. What kind of game are you playing now? You old hound. Nothing, I swear. I'm dead serious. Snot and tears flowed. He was turning on the full waterworks. The chest holds proof. Please, just spare my life. I glared down at him with an icy, glacial stare, then kicked the iron chest wide open. Gold. A massive avalanche of gold coins poured across the floorboards like liquid sunlight, and tucked between the coins were sealed missives stamped with wax. The topmost letter bore the official royal crest. I snatched it up, scanning the words by torchlight. Baron Albert's probe has drawn the gaze of His Majesty. Per the prince's directives, the Shuai territory matter must be settled prior to the autumn hunt. Border military deployment blueprints attached. The orc crisis can be exploited to facilitate the takeover of Shuai territory. The Council of Noble Elders has been prearranged. My fist clenched, making the parchment grovel and crunch in my hand. A prince mandated this. It wasn't just Horn calling the shots. An actual royal wanted my lands wiped off the map, and my kin slaughtered. They handed over military intelligence. They cleared every political hurdle. They manipulated Horn like a puppet and weaponized the orcs to do the dirty work. My father, Albert, stumbled onto the blood theft racket. He intended to blow the whistle, so they bumped him off, framing it as a random orc ambush. And right on cue, Horn rocked up with his fake niece, and that marriage offer of his, just to clean up the remains. It all adds up, every single detail. The fluke orc raid, the sketchy route they chose, the ridiculous timing, my old man dying a hero while I, the real me, was wasted, hiding out in the wine cellar. So that's the play. I muttered, slowly rolling up the scroll, my knuckles turning white. I just can't tell which royal wanted the Shuai clan wiped out. Casper was slamming his forehead against the stone floor. My lord, I've spilled everything. Have mercy. I turned and strode out of the chamber, my voice eerily quiet. Bring him along, Royce. Gather every last miner in the courtyard. Marco, get the new decree ready for announcement. The bleak stone courtyard was crammed with tattered miners. Hundreds of them, slouching low, sunken-eyed and completely broken. They seemed like folks who had completely forgotten what hope even felt like. I stood upon the steps, with Casper and the mine bosses right behind me, trussed up like cargo, by decree of Baron Shuai. I didn't yell, but a dead hush fell over the courtyard. Slavery in Greystone is done with effective right now. Marco stepped out, holding a document. From this day on, all miners are recognized as contract workers. a 5-year term of labor. Grants full citizenship and 5 acres of land. Monthly pay will be distributed based on production. The gathering went wild. An elderly miner with skin like weathered leather sank to his knees, his lips quivering. All out of words. In the crowd around him, others wept, clutching one another, trembling as if struck by a lightning bolt of pure hope. Royce hauled Casper forward. The elderly manager was sprawled in the mud, looking just like a collapsed balloon in fancy gear. As for this lot, I nudged Casper with my boot, my tone dropping below zero. They're going to pay for burying workers alive and trading human lives like cattle. Marco began reciting from the ledgers. Over the last 2 years, 43 miners perished in mishaps, 17 bashed to death. String him up at the pit entrance. I commanded, let everyone witness. Exactly what happens to those who screw over the folks they're supposed to protect. A tiny figure suddenly darted from the crowd. A youngster caked in coal grime. My lord, my dad, he was. As I dropped to one knee, my armor clinked, and I met his gaze dead on. What's your name? T. Tommy. My lord. His filthy fingers wove together. My dad, last month down shaft. They claimed it was just a fluke. I unhooked a short sword from my waistband, engraved with a soaring eagle, and proffered it to him. Take it. The first blow belongs to you. Tommy's hand trembled as he clutched the hilt, tears carving clean paths through the dark soot. On his cheeks, public approval plus 30. Workforce plus 235. Miners unlocked. Rare resource. Blood iron ore deposit discovered. Later that night, in the Greystone strategy room, candles flickered everywhere, with or specimens laid out on the desk, right beside the seized record books, and the most perilous piece of mail I'd ever laid eyes on. Time to play some real-deal politics. Marco. 2 classified letters. I tapped the sample. First, a thorough breakdown of Horn's offenses and plotting. The slain laborers. The whole deal, including signed statements from the crew, pinned in blood if we can manage it. The theatrics will help draw focus to the royal letter. Don't say a single word, I muttered with a cold smile. Now for the second dispatch. Provide a detailed analysis of the bloodsteel's properties. Include a refined sample, but pack it inside a plain iron box. Absolutely no special markings. Royce's eyes narrowed as he caught on. Ah, you're planning to show the king exactly what he needs to see, while giving him enough room to save face. I picked up the prince's letter, holding it directly over the candle flame. We watched the parchment curl, blacken, and turn to ash. As for this, it never existed. Because here's the real game. A prince orchestrated the destruction of my family. The king may or may not have been in on it. If I wave this letter around screaming for justice, I instantly become a threat to the crown. I'd be dead within a month. But if I pretend I never found it, send the king proof of Horn's crimes, which are genuinely horrific, and separately reveal to him that bloodsteel exists, well, now the king gets to publicly punish Horn's conspirators, look incredibly righteous, and discover a strategic supermetal that I happen to control. Suddenly, I'm an asset instead of a liability. So, we send 2 teams, I continued. One takes the main highway, a massive escort and a loud, flashy procession, carrying the evidence of the crimes for everyone to see. The other team will disguise themselves as a merchant caravan, secretly, delivering the bloodsteel sample straight to the capital. Marco's eyes lit up like a hunter's. You're using bait to lure the beast out of its den. Plus, it gives His Majesty a graceful way out. He can crush whoever steps up to defend Horn, without ever admitting the crown was dirty to begin with. That decoy convoy is going to draw out every single rat tied to Horn's syndicate. They'll completely expose themselves, trying to intercept the evidence right before the king would handily give me a hit list of traitors to wipe out, all while I played the part of the loyal, clueless baron, who just stumbled upon some pretty fascinating, or the prince who murdered my father figures. The Shuaying family is completely finished. Just a drunk heir, a frozen wasteland, and a dead end. But he has no clue. The drunk is sober now, the wasteland is packing blood, and steel, and that dead end. Just figured out exactly who wants him 6 feet under. Stay patient, build up power. Remember everything, forget absolutely nothing. The Starfaller is playing the long game from here on out. The peaceful morning at Snow Eagle Castle was totally shattered by hooves pounding on stone, and a goat sending sparks flying off the cobblestones. Like some kind of 4-legged flint striker, Royce was hoisting Grindon right up in the air with one hand, leaving the dwarf's stubby legs kicking wildly in every direction. By the gods' beards, watch it, you're spilling my morning brew. Royce tuned him out completely. The guy treats dwarf complaints like mere background noise. and slapped a piece of parchment right against Grindon's chest. Coal dust flew everywhere. Greystone or sample, the Lord says. You'll know what it is. Grindon squinted through his heavy hangover fog, unrolled the message, and froze instantly like someone hit his pause button. The charcoal sketch depicted a mineral specimen, with veins that practically looked like bleeding pulses, crimson patterns cutting right through the dark metal. His calloused fingers traced the lines, and his boozy nose gave a twitch. Earth's blood, this can't be real. Suddenly, his goat reared up on its hind legs and bolted straight for the castle gate, with the dwarf hanging on for dear life. Staring wide-eyed and slack-jawed, he completely missed his beloved flask of ale, dropping right into the dirt, the golden brew spilling into the earth. Grindon ditching his booze? Yeah, that's how you know stuff's getting real. Inside the Greystone War room, this is a vital asset. I wrap my knuckles on the table. It can't fall into enemy hands. Starting tomorrow, the North Ridge mine gets maximum security. All bloodsteel goes straight to Snow Eagle Castle. Royce grimaces, my lord. Our current troops might not even hit 30 capable fighters. Recruit from the liberated miners. They'll guard the site. Turning to Marco, I asked for commercial route ideas. Marco gently caressed the bloodsteel piece, as if it were an infant. Based on Horn's ledgers, this hoard is worth over 20,000 gold coins on the underground market, but dumping raw or means leaving cash on the table. I suggest we craft it into weaponry first. Right then, the system dropped, a prompt that made my inner gamer lose his mind. Ding! Secret quest unlocked. Bloodsteel crafting matrix. Forging facility unlocked. Advanced structure. Bloodsteel smelter. Exclusive traits. Glacial iron kiln. Refining boost plus 40%. Relic sigil smithy. Mythic gear drop rate plus 0.5%. Bloodsteel harmonizing room. Armaments. Unique properties plus 25%. Crafting matrix active. Any true mount and blade veteran knows. The core experience isn't about mounted combat. It's entirely about the blacksmithing. The running gag among players is that it needs a title change, since people spend way more time hammering iron than riding horses. Personally, I've clocked hundreds of hours, forging digital blades back in Colradia, crafting gear, and flipping it for sweet profit. But now I've got an actual smithy, capable of true mythic crafting, perks, bloodsteel, and custom stats included. My brain completely glitched for a solid 5 seconds. My lord. Marco gawked at me like I just suffered a minor stroke. Snapping out of it, I pulled out a construction blueprint that the system had so handily spawned right inside my code. Erect a smithy workshop on Snow Eagle Castle South Lot. Follow these exact schematics. Marco unfurled the paperwork, and his eyes went wide as dinner plates. My lord, this is going to drain our entire treasury, plus everything we plundered from Horn. Totally worth it. I glanced toward the entrance, right as Grindon came bursting through, resembling a wrecking ball fueled by booze and pure hype. His eyes were practically bulging out like golf balls. Gods above, that really is Earth's blood, because this forge, I declared with absolute certainty, will churn out weapons of legend. Grindon's ears perked up so fast, they almost made a whistling sound. The alcohol stains on his beard completely forgotten. Hold up, did you say legendary gear? He lunged at the table in 3 quick, dwarven strides, jabbing a thick, stubby finger at the bloodsteel ingot. Using just this material? What's the matter? Is our master dwarf smith losing his nerve? Oh, his face flushed bright tomato red, and his boozy nose looked just like a ripe strawberry. Back when I was an apprentice in the capital, my blades had the elves drooling. Then, dropping his voice down to a low whisper, his calloused hands gently traced the swirling patterns of the bloodsteel. But this by itself won't cut it. He got close to the specimen and inhaled deeply, since dwarves apparently recognize all ores by scent, meaning he cast a shady glance around, then pulled a waterproof pouch out from his belt, unwrapping the protective cloth, revealing 3 shimmering blue gems inside, instantly coating the tabletop with a layer of genuine, frosty iron hearts. He muttered, as if naming some forbidden weaponry. Only with these can bloodsteel truly wake up. He massaged his stubby fingers together. But you'd still need specialized smithing methods. What's your priority? A master craftsman. Like my mentor, his gaze turning sly. Old Grom is as hard-headed as crude pig iron. Yet he's the last living dwarf who remembers the old rune smithing. Marco began running the numbers, recruiting a dwarven master from the capital would run. At least, don't even bother crunching it. I faced Grindon, tell your boss. That Snow Eagle Castle holds the sole ancient rune. Forging anvil in the whole realm. Grindin's snout flushed bright red. By the gods' beards, you don't even have a single brick laid yet. You're pretty much just hyping it up. I grinned, tapping the interface layout, my finger pointing to the fortress's subterranean zone, where a scarlet wave indicator was highlighted. There's a primal volcanic hotspot, right under Snow Eagle Castle. Plenty to fuel a magma-driven kiln. The dwarf's goatee bristled straight up. A geothermal kiln? He grabbed the schematics with shaking hands. This layout, I leaned closer to his ear. The heat scales to 3 times a standard forge. Just picture merging that with frost iron cooling. His eyes went wide as gold coins. His round beard is completely vertical. Good God, why didn't you say so sooner? I'm hitting the road right this second. That stubborn old mule will brave the freezing frost, clutching those iron hearts and steel alloy samples, and drag himself here on his knees if necessary. Grundin tore out through the castle gate with such fury, he pretty much flipped a grain wagon. His goat went absolutely ballistic heading for the capital, kicking up a massive cloud of dust that resembled a dirt dragon chasing down the horizon. Imagine a dwarf ditching his precious ale to ride at breakneck speed, straight toward his estranged mentor, all fueled by the guarantee of legendary craftsmanship, and a furnace hot enough to melt reality itself. Meanwhile, here I am, standing around, after totally bluffing about owning a workshop that hasn't even been built yet, using schematics that literally materialized out of a video game system, and guaranteeing tech run by a geothermal thermal vent. I haven't even excavated yet, but hey, the schematics are legit. The geothermal vein is definitely down there, and once old Grum pulls up and sees what we're putting together, I never want to leave. Mount and Blade taught me 2 crucial things. Always stack points in archery, and never underestimate the value of a top-tier forge. It's time to put the blacksmith back in. Mount and Blacksmith, the Starfaller Lord, is officially breaking into the weapons manufacturing game, baby. 1 month later, the smithy was finally coming together on Snow Eagle Castle's southern side, a circular structure featuring a massive subterranean furnace right at its core. I stood inside the partially completed workshop, feeling the floorboards vibrate straight through my boots. The system's geothermal well was already radiating intense heat. This place felt alive. My lord, they've arrived. I bolted straight to the gates. Making its way up the path was the most utterly absurd caravan I'd ever laid eyes on. Grundin is out front on his goat, with 3 carts pulled by massive mountain goats trailing behind, and perched right on the middle cart like a total grouch. A red-bearded king of cranks, the grand master of the iron anvil, and the capital city's top blacksmith. The real deal. That old dwarf hit the deck so hard, I'd swear the ground actually shuddered. He marched straight up to me, his hazy eyes suddenly getting sharp as daggers. "Kid, you better not have played me," he rumbled, sounding like grinding blocks of iron. I kept my mouth shut and just escorted him inside. The exact moment Grom's boot hit the workshop floor, he froze up, pressing his bare palm against the wall, his eyes shrinking down to pinpoints. Feeling the pulse, his gravelly voice went quiet. "It's alive." The system-generated workshop was doing its thing, with the runes carved into the walls, pulsing bright and dim with the flow of geothermal energy, respiring like a lung made of stone. The floor surrounding the main forge felt warm, even through heavy iron boots. Next thing I knew, Grom grabbed my collar with rough, calloused hands and yanked me close, his foul breath hitting me like a punch. "Boy, where'd you score these schematics?" He jabbed a thick finger toward the walls. "This runic layout is long gone. Lost dwarven secrets from the ancient Schwein family vaults." Keeping a totally straight face without any hesitation, the lie slipped right out of me, smoother than butter on hot toast. "Total BS." His roar rattled dust loose from the ceiling. "You humans can't even decipher proper runes." Then his tone dropped, and his gaze turned dangerous. "Unless," he pointed that thick finger downward, "you unearthed it." My heart began to race. The system blueprints were apparently linked to something very real in this world's history. Time to play along. The cellars underneath Snow Eagle Castle seriously hold some pretty bizarre stuff. Grom let go of me like I'd shocked him, stumbling back a couple of steps. Gods above. He scrambled for a worn leather flask at his waist and chugged it down with trembling hands. I knew it. Right after the massive quake, the core of the furnace just vanished. Hidden lore triggered. Legend of the Furnace Heart. Special tech unlocked. Ancient rune forging basics. Grundin crept over and whispered the backstory to me. Rumor has it that when the dwarf realm fell, Their absolute finest forge core was smuggled up to the surface. Old Grom's been hunting for it for 2 centuries, 200 years. This dwarf has been tracking a legendary forge core for longer than my entire homeland has even existed, and my gaming system just casually spawns one right in my basement. Grom dropped to his knees right before the forge, praying in Dwarvish. But when he finally stood up, that cloudy look in his eyes was totally gone, replaced by pure fire. Time to get to work. The old dwarf's roar practically rattled the roof tiles. Grondin, get the frost iron essence ready. Kid, he barked, pointing at me. Fetch every scrap of blood steel. Grondin held out his blue crystals, as if they were sacred relics. Check out this quality. Master Grom snatched them away, glanced at them for a split second, and muttered, decent but second rate. Then he pulled a tiny iron container from his pouch. Let me show you what real frost iron hearts look like. Legendary material discovered. Pure frost iron heart, epic tempering. Efficiency plus 80%, weapon sharpness plus 50%. As the container clicked open, the temperature in the workshop plummeted 10 degrees. Inside lay 3 deep blue crystals, shrouded in delicate frost patterns, giving off a chill like tiny, portable winters. Grindin's crystals were total knockoffs. Next to these, the old man had been packing epic-grade crafting materials in his pants. This entire time, the moment the first blood steel ingot hit the furnace, something magical happened. The blood, red veins on the metal's surface began to throb, literally pulsing just like a heartbeat. The whole block flared a deep crimson, and the furnace flames shifted from orange to blue. See that? Grom's voice cracked with emotion. It's breathing. A system readout popped up. Blood steel smelting progress. Purity, 78%, 89%, 93%. Warning. Temperature approaching critical threshold. Isn't that getting too hot? I asked. With raised eyebrows, Grom grinned, flashing his nasty yellow teeth. Perfect. He yanked a control lever. White steam blasted from the copper pipes lining the furnace walls. Want to know why they call it the heart of the furnace? Because it regulates itself. The internal machinery of the furnace began to shift. 3 ring-shaped partitions extended from the sides, splitting the fire into separate temperature zones. At the top level, blood steel had already melted into a thick liquid. In the middle, it was softening. At the bottom, fresh or was just starting to glow. By Morden's beard, Grindin clutched his frost iron crystals, his jaw completely dropping. This is real dwarven engineering. Grom stripped off his shirt, revealing a scarred, muscular build that looked chiseled. From the very same stone as the workshop, he grabbed a specialized hammer from the tool rack, an octagonal head with every single face engraved with different runes. Watch closely, boy. The old dwarf's tone turned dead serious. For the very first time, this is phase 1 of rune forging, the awakening. As the hammer first struck the glowing blood steel ingot, the entire workshop trembled. Runes on the hammerhead flared crimson, and the steel's blood patterns answered, echoing, vibrating and singing. With every single strike, the designs began to shift, rearranging into far more intricate patterns. The metal wasn't merely being molded. It was being raised from its slumber. 3 days, and 3 nights of relentless pounding. I dropped by every day, watching the system's forging progress. Bar creep forward. Just like the world's most nerve-wracking loading screen. On day 4, the bar finally hit 100%. I practically busted the door down, and a blast of heat, blended with sorcery and iron, smacked me right in the face. Grom was collapsed against the anvil table. His rune hammer snapped clean in 2. Yet, his face carried the most content grin I'd ever witnessed. On any living being, his gaze was glued to the blade resting on the workbench. It's finished. His voice was a mere breath. The first one in 3 centuries. An authentic rune weapon. Stepping closer, I saw the blade was a deep maroon, resembling clotted blood. Golden runic motifs coated the exterior, and they were shifting, breathing, flowing like animated calligraphy. The moment I bent down, the symbols flared brighter. The blade recognized me. Bloodsteel rune sword. Unnamed. Legendary grade. Unawakened. 0/100 perks. Blood drink. Lifesteal upon hit. Blood rage. Attack speed up 20% for 30 seconds after sustaining damage. 2 additional slots remain locked. And here's the best part. Hidden trait. Growth. Evolve alongside the user's power. A legendary weapon that scales. So it levels up right along with me. This blade is never going to get outdated. Talk about the gift that keeps on stabbing. Grom looked up, his bloodshot eyes locked onto me. One final step needs the master's blood. He passed over a sleek, delicate silver dagger. 3 drops right where the runes converge. Without a second thought, I sliced my palm open. 3 droplets of blood dripped onto the metal. Instantly, the golden glyphs flared with a crimson light. The sword throbbed in my grip like an extra heartbeat. Blood pact finalized. Weapon bound. Richard Schwein, growth trait unlocked. Now, the old dwarf rasped. Give it a name. Choose carefully. This title tethers the blade to your soul forever. I gazed intensely at the glowing symbols. The blood-red steel. The icy mist hanging from the cooling process. The solemn vow I made to the monarch. And the looming winter ahead. Frostsworn. The runes sparked once, approving the title, before settling down into a comforting, steady radiance. I was literally holding a living, breathing, blood-drinking, mythic blade that I crafted inside a volcanic forge, driven by primordial dwarven engineering, strengthened by legendary gems, and consecrated with my own veins. The local cellar drunkard now possessed gear that would make emperors jealous. Suddenly, the door burst open and totally ruined the vibe. Roy walked in, looking like someone had served him a giant bowl of bad news. My lord, the royal messengers have reached the main hall. They're delivering a brand new mandate from a king. He dropped his tone to a whisper. They've been snooping around the smithy. No surprise there. I unlock a legendary weapon, and the palace deploys spies within hours. You can't keep a secret in this realm, especially not when constructing a volcanic forge that rattles the earth and blasts blue flames into the heavens. Glancing down, Frostsworn glows softly in my hand. Time to deal with these royal busybodies. And for once, I'm not going in defenseless. The Starfaller wields a legendary blade now. So let's find out. Who wants to play politics with that on the line? Standing by the tower window, I watched a dozen knights in royal capes guide a lavish carriage across my drawbridge. The UI conveniently labeled everyone, acting like a social media app for medieval politics. Royal delegation. Special Envoy Algernon Whitehall. Affiliation 60. Chief Secretary to the King. He's a good cop. Knight Captain Redmond. Affiliation -50. Second Prince's Lackey. He's the bad cop. Finance Officer Lyons. Affiliation 0. Finance Minister's Mole. Basically, the bean counter cop. 3 different factions. I scoffed. Algernon's here to give out prizes, while Redmond acts as the second prince's hound, digging for dirt. So, the second prince was the one who had my family slaughtered. Meanwhile, the finance guy arrives to assess exactly how much my blood and steel are worth. 3 separate factions marching into my home, all sporting the same livery. Court politics is just a team-building exercise for folks who want to stab each other in the back. I changed in my formal attire, a midnight blue doublet with silver soaring eagles on the cuffs, and fastened Frostsworn to my hip. Right out there in plain sight, the deep red scabbard with gold runes had a faint glow in the flickering candlelight. Low-key, nothing too scary. Spot on, Galvin. Keep production rolling, but only put the run-of-the-mill gear on display. The dull stuff, he caught on right away. Should I hide Master Grom? No point. That old guy's awful attitude is the perfect cover story. Nobody's gonna grill a dwarf who answers questions by yelling curses and chucking mallets. Honestly, Grom's rage issues double as our security system. When I walked into the Great Hall, the delegation was already assembled. Algernon, with his sophisticated, slicked-back gray hair and a golden quill insignia on his chest, offered a polite bow. Baron, by order of the king, we've come to praise your achievements. Right behind him, Knight Captain Redmond scoffed coldly, clad in full steel plate armor. His visor was down, and an iron glove rested on his sword pommel, his eyes sweeping across every inch of my hall, as if he were collecting evidence for future trial. Lines, the bean counter, lingered in the back, like a human shadow, staring intently at Frostsworn on my hip. He was probably pricing it out in his head already. The guy could seriously calculate the street value of your own organs. Serving the realm is my privilege, I replied, giving a textbook aristocratic bow. Let me host a welcome banquet. Algernon brushed the offer aside. No need. His Majesty cares far more about your frontier defense strategy. Then, shifting to official mode, he drew a gold embossed scroll from a silk case, gripped by an attendant. The king bestows upon the Shuaiying clan permanent, hereditary rights to Greystone land, along with a 3-year tax holiday. 2 additional trunks are brought inside. Yearly subsidies for border security. 5,000 gold pieces every single year. Tax-exempt land and hereditary domain. The monarch was basically throwing a massive care package my way. I took the decree, while keeping an eye on Redmond pacing my hall. like a wolf clad in iron plate. The Shuaiying family will protect the north with honor, I declared, making sure my voice carried across the room. Algernon smirked, then leaned in close to whisper in my ear. His Majesty is highly pleased with how you managed that horn. Business. The real message? The king is fully aware of the prince's missive. He knows I intercepted it, and he knows I reduced it to ash. This whole setup is just hush money for keeping things quiet. Clever ruler, but an even sharper baron. We read each other loud and clear. Allow me to introduce Sir Redmond. Algernon chimed, projecting his voice once more. He guaranteed our safe journey down here. Redmond stepped out, his words echoing from behind his visor, like a muffled, metallic threat. My lord, word has reached me that your battalions maneuver with the sheer clockwork precision of magic automatons. Tell me, how exactly did you forge such a crack unit in just a few months? His heavy steel sabotants grated against the marble, sounding like nails scratching down a blackboard, particularly when the Shuaiying estate's accounts have famously been, shall we say, emptier than a goblin's wallet. The entire room suddenly went ice cold. Not like magic, just a vibe in the room. Every single guard instantly went rigid. I noticed lines pulling out notepad, scribbling away already. These guys definitely arrived ready to pick apart my setup. My men simply happened to handle a blade way better than the gilded playthings in the capital. I made sure my tone sounded perfectly bewildered, acting as if his aggression was totally uncalled for. A frontier lord honing his steel is just as routine as a peasant sharpening his scythe. Algernon cleared his throat politely. Sir Redmond trains the garrison back in the capital, so martial tactics naturally pique his interest. Spoken like a true pro. I'm sure the Baron has his own approach. Suddenly, Redmond unheated his sword and aimed it straight at me. That piece on your hip, Baron. Mind if I take a gander? According to highborn manners, the hall fell dead silent. Demanding to check out a fellow noble's blade like this is pretty much slapping him across the face. It is a straight-up challenge masked in courtesy. My fingers gripped Frostwarn's hilt. The scarlet glyphs started to pulse beneath my hand, feeding off the hostility. The weapon was quite literally getting hyped up. My steel never leaves the scabbard without drawing blood. Sir Knight, my voice dropped to a whisper. Are you entirely sure you want to test that rumor right now? Then let it bleed. His face guard slammed down with a sharp metallic snap. I would love to check out this famous weapon of the North. Algernon parted his lips to step in, but lines cut right across him. Of all people, the beam counter speaks up. Gentlemen, perhaps we move to the training grounds? The throne does require an evaluation of regional battle readiness. He shot a knowing look in my direction. Just a friendly match, totally casual. Right, as friendly as a handshake from Shark. I saw right through their little game. This was no accident. The second prince deployed Redmond, either to uncover my hidden cards, or to completely humiliate me out in the open. Lines was eager to witness Frostsworn in action, just to report back on its true potential, while Algernon, the king's loyal lackey, likely had strict orders to just take notes. Everyone wanted a piece of this brawl for their own reasons. Putting on a hesitant act, I let them assume I was sweating it, then gave a reluctant nod, if the special envoy insists. But behind the scenes, my gamer brain was absolutely smirking. This dude is sitting at -50 friendship, rocking full plate armor, and packing the pure ego of someone who's never squared off against a baron wielding a legendary scaling weapon, backed by a system-assisted aimbot. Redmond thinks he's about to expose some backwater scrub, but he's actually about to learn what Frostwarn does when it gets a little hungry. Out in the training yard, castle guards lined up on one flank, with royal knights flanking the other. The tension in the air was thick enough to slice. Redmond had traded his heavy plate armor for lighter chainmail, and he brandished a massive two-handed greatsword that shimmered like it was just dying to get acquainted with my vital organs. Algernon drove his staff right between us. By warrior's blood as our witness, the moment of victor is decided. Cease at once. Without warning, Redmond lunged first. That massive sword came crashing down like a collapsing building. I quickly dodged left. Frostsworn retaliated, thrusting toward his ribs from an awkward angle. He was forced to drop his offensive just to parry. Bright sparks erupted as our steel collided. Legit, literal sparks, not just the poetic expression. Right after that, his swordplay got seriously bizarre. The greatsword began leaving afterimages in midair, moving way faster than physics should permit. Some sort of magical enchantment on his gear. The second prince's attack dog has some nice toys. I muttered, intentionally leaving a gap in my guard. Bait, and Redman took it, committing fully to a massive horizontal slash. The instant that blade came screaming at me, I ducked. Steel whipped over my head, close enough to give me a haircut, and, while he was completely overextended, Frostsworn grazed his thigh. Redman grunted. But no blood spilled, because Frostsworn literally drank it. The flesh split open, but the blood flowed straight into the blade, rather than pooling on the ground. I felt a warm vibration surge up through the hilt, and into my hand, like the sword just had a little snack. Blood drink triggered. 3 HP absorbed per hit. Worse yet for Redman, the laceration wouldn't close up. The edges of the wound turned grayish-white. His own body couldn't repair the damage. Frostworn didn't merely slice targets. It cut them open, and then commanded their flesh to forget how to heal. Dark magic, Redman bellowed. You dare employ forbidden sorcery? I didn't even bother to reply. Simply pressing the attack. Frostsworn moved as if it were alive in my grip, each slash leaving a trail of crimson light. The blade was genuinely loving this. My weapon was having a better time than me. Redman's guard finally began to crumble. His chainmail accumulated fresh tears, the way a terrible product collects 1-star reviews. Then, the knight pulled a dirty trick. He feigned to stumble backward, and right as I lunged to press my advantage, he drew a concealed dagger from his boot, hurling it right at my face, but I jerked away. Still, the edge sliced my cheek wide open. Blood streamed down my jaw, dripping onto Frostworn. Bad call, Redmond. Seriously bad call. Blood rage triggered. Attack speed plus 20% for 30 seconds. You just fed my blade and my blood. Now, it's pissed off on my behalf. What followed next was half a minute of sheer, unadulterated violence. Frostsworn transformed into a streak of crimson lightning. My hands flew faster than my mind could even register. The system was injecting pure haste straight into my muscles. Blow after blow after blow. It was so rapid, the edge became nothing but a constant red smear. Redmond went into total lockdown defense. His greatsword vibrated violently from parrying the blows. His arms were trembling, and his stance was completely falling apart. Right then, I caught it. His center shifted. A fatal misstep. His guard dropped for a split second. A split second was all that Frostsworn required. The Scarlet Blade crashed down with every ounce of my strength. It slammed right into Redmond's greatsword, a weapon forged from solid steel, and sheared straight through it like the metal was soft cheese. The cleaving edge didn't stop there. It bit right into Redmond's right arm, landing just below the elbow. Crack! The sickening crunch of fracturing bone reverberated across the dead-silent courtyard. His forearm thumped onto the frozen earth, its fingers still gripping half of a shattered hilt. The severed stump turned pale for an instant, before the torrent of blood finally burst forth. The elite knight captain of the Second Prince was now kneeling in the frost, short one arm, wheezing like a ruptured pair of bellows. I housed Frostsworn as the glowing blood runes gradually dimmed, much like a satisfied predator winding down after a hunt. Gazing down at him, I said, "Go inform your master. Sword from the north are built for lopping off paws." That's going way too far. Complete silence fell over the drill grounds. A sentry let his pike slip. Nobody even blinked. Algernon instantly signaled the medical team to get over here, while keeping the Sovereign Guards from doing anything completely. Brain dead. Smart move. He cleared his throat, looking over the blood-drenched snow. "The duel is over, Sir Redmond. Kindly go with the medic." Turning toward me, he lowered his voice. "Baron, a word in private." We relocated to a secure room. Algernon pulled out a scroll bearing the sovereign crest. "The king highly respects your capabilities." His gaze fixated on Frostsworn hanging at my hip. I unsealed the note. Just a single phrase. "The northern lands require a fresh protector." Brief, yet heavy. Aldrian dropped his volume to an absolute whisper. The whole Bloodsteel situation has drawn quite a bit of interest from various factions. His Majesty trusts you will share the rewards. He threw a pointed look in the direction of my smithy. Let's say 10 standard-issue Bloodsteel blades annually. The old monarch wanted weaponry in exchange for royal backing. A business deal masquerading as feudal allegiance. The Snow Eagle domain will forever remain the realm's devoted bulwark. I replied, weighing every single syllable. However, our Bloodsteel output is incredibly scarce. I require further funding to scale operations. Aldrin gave a knowing, wide grin. The frontier. Garrison funding could be bumped up to 8,000 gold pieces a year. Furthermore, the king would deeply appreciate it if you kept tabs. Uncertain, he gestured with a finger toward the royal city. Restless factions. The Second Prince, the sovereign, wanted to use me as a check against his own flesh and blood. The very prince who had signed my family's death warrant. And now the king was recruiting me to keep him in check. It felt like the universe was literally handing me a shot at payback. Gift wrapped with a massive royal check. Kindly convey my gratitude to His Majesty for his confidence. I guided Algernon over to the blacksmith workshop. The smokestack was already spewing thick, crimson smoke, well before we even neared the place. Grom's booming voice made the window panes rattle. Beat it, you lot. You gold-plated bloodsuckers. Aren't even worthy of looking at a dwarven forge. A pair of royal knights came stumbling out backward, completely covered in soot. One of them had holes scorched through his cape from the flying embers. Pure perfection. Grom's infamous temper was playing out exactly according to plan. The master smith seems a bit wound up. Stifling a smirk, I signaled for Algernon to wait outside. I stepped inside by myself. A wave of intense heat and heavy clanging slammed into me like a brick wall. Grom was fiercely hammering a glowing metal block, with sparks erupting everywhere like pissed-off fireflies. He shot me a glare. What? Another tourist trip? Do I look like some kind of circus dwarf to you? The royal envoy, I stated, placing Frost's sworn onto the anvil table. You want to find out if this blade can be mass-produced. The rhythmic pounding ceased as Grom stared at the weapon, before bursting into a roaring laugh that literally shook the walls. Mass-produced? You think we just bake rune blades like cheap bread rolls? He aggressively grabbed Frost's sworn, his calloused fingers tracing the intricate engravings, his voice dropping to a low, furnace-like rumble. This weapon only exists because of 3 specific components: the core of the forge, pure frost iron essence, and master-level dwarven runecraft. He slammed the blade back down onto the workspace, sending embers flying everywhere. The forge's core takes a full 30 years to recover. The frost iron essence is completely depleted, and the rune hammer is totally busted. Algernon stood framed in the doorway, scowling deeply. So what's the deal with standard bloodsteel arms? Grom scoffed, hauling a wooden crate out from the corner, before kicking open the lid to reveal 20 dark, crimson blades. These I can crank out, he said, snatching one. Carelessly, he hacked at an iron block, slicing a deep crater right into it. Way better than common steel. Kills an orc's healing factor. Never gets rusty. But next to a genuine rune weapon, he laughed disdainfully. It's like comparing a twig to a dragon's breath. Grabbing a short sword, my system instantly scanned the item. Bloodsteel longsword. Elite perks, anti-regeneration status. Infinite rust immunity. 20 bloodsteel blades annually, I pitched. Aldrian's eyes flashed with pure political avarice. The king will be thrilled, though every piece must be strictly catalogued. We keep tabs on every single edge. Naturally, I offered a polite grin, agreeing without hesitation because a mere 20 tracked swords a year was a drop in the bucket, compared to what I could actually manufacture. Let the king have his playthings. I'd keep the real supply classified. Win-win. Suddenly a battle. Horns shattered the quiet as Galvin slammed into the workshop, looking as white as if someone had pumped ice water into his veins. My lord, the scouts report. A massive horde of orcs gathering in the Frost Whisper Peaks. Aldrin lost all color. What's the head count? Easily 1,000. Galvin swallowed hard. And they're flying the colors of the Bloodspear tribe. The Bloodspear tribe? They were 5 times larger than the Bloodscar pack. By far the largest, most brutal orc faction in the entire Frost Whisper range. And their bread and butter? Breaking frost wolves for sub-zero combat. 1,000 orcs with war-trained wolves raiding in the dead of winter. They're absolute prime season, and they're marching straight for my lands. I literally just severed a royal bodyguard's arm, brokered a massive arms deal with the king, and now the most massive orc horde I've ever encountered is right on my doorstep. Frost pulsed with power, humming softly at my hip, practically begging for blood. Well, I mumbled under my breath. At least the blade is hyped. Battle horns blared, echoing across Snow Eagle Castle, as the beacons were ignited, sending thick plumes of black smoke into the air like furious pillars, broadcasting the warning throughout my domain. Trouble. Serious trouble. I scaled the ramparts, and the UI map automatically expanded. Crimson dots were cropping up all over the northern Frost Whisper foothills, like some kind of breakout. A massive breakout. An angry, axe-wielding, green-skinned outbreak. Scout alert. Orc tribal army. 1,200. Threat level. Extreme. Destination. Snow Eagle Castle. 1,200. Not 200 like the previous raid. 1,200. That's 6 times the size of the force that nearly obliterated my outpost defenses. And they're heading right for my front gates. Algernon came sprinting up behind me, his extravagant mink overcoat dragging through the snow like a fluffy broom. My lord, should we send word to the Border Legion for backup? My attention wasn't even on the orc invaders. It was locked onto a completely different red blip, stationed inside my own fortress. Redman's location. The newly one-armed knight I had just dismembered. The system interface flagged him with an updated scarlet label. Spy of the Second Prince. Hostile. Well, there's a shocker. Letting out a sigh, I raised my voice, making sure to project it clearly. No need for any reinforcements. The fortifications of Snow Eagle Castle are completely unbreakable. Algernon blinked, but regarding the ORC forces, or a special envoy is clueless about. I raised my voice, making sure every sentry on the wall heard. Is that? We just seized Horn's concealed siege weaponry. From Greystone, 20 heavy ballista turrets, plus massive stockpiles of incendiary oil, just sitting ready in our depots. Total BS, a complete fairy tale, of course. I didn't have a single bit of that. Yet the troops instantly squared their shoulders. Chests out, total confidence boost. And way more importantly, Redmond, skulking around somewhere below, pressing his one good ear against every wall, just swallowed a major dose of fake news that he'd definitely try leaking to the enemy. Two birds with one lie. A morale injection and sweet counterintelligence. Man, I'm getting pretty good at this. Galvin, guide the special envoy back to his quarters. I've got to check out our perimeter myself. The moment the room cleared out, I pulled Royce aside. Redmond is a mole for the Second Prince. Royce's comeback was instantaneous and chilling. Want me to handle him? Now, handling it, coming from Royce, meant a very permanent kind of retirement. Nah, he's worth more to us breathing for now. As darkness fell, I analyzed the sand table, all by myself in the command hub, tracking the tactical map as the Orc Battalion pitched their tents at the North Village ruins. Baron Ethel suddenly appeared at my window, looking like she'd been standing there all along. Frost crystals dusting her silver hair. 0 footsteps, absolutely no heads up. Just FYI, the Bloodspear clan brought backup. She glided inside, ice flakes melting on her cloak, shimmering like little diamonds. I noticed human scouts embedded within the orc lines. Human scouts? Meaning, someone was steering the orcs. An insider who knew the layout. Someone with a massive stake in watching my fortress crumble. Take 3 guesses who. Skip the first 2, they don't matter. Then came the absolute worst part. They brought heavy siege weapons. 3 counterweight trebuchets. Legit trebuchets, total pro gear. Not those sketchy catapults I dragged out of the system menu, but actual, military-grade counterweights. Siege artillery capable of reducing my fortifications to dust. My fingers nervously drummed against the sandbox map. The ramparts of Snow Eagle Castle were solid, but relentless. Pounding from those trebuchets would inevitably smash right through them. Can you take them out? Next to impossible. Ethel replied, shaking her head. They've set them up right in the middle of the orc camp, under heavy guard. Just then, a detail on the system map caught my eye. Redman's red indicator was creeping along, quietly sneaking down toward the cells. A smirk crept onto my face. Ethel, I'm gonna need a hand with something. Deep within the labyrinthine tunnels of the dungeon, Redman's one-armed silhouette glided across the torchlit masonry. Like a mangled spider, the knight captain sneaked up to the deepest cell, produced a stolen key, and unlocked the heavy iron door. With a loud, bone-chilling screech, locked inside was an orc captive. He was missing his left ear and wore 3 bronze hoops, his amber-colored eyes gleaming through the darkness. He belonged to the Bloodscar tribe we had captured. Who goes there? The orc grunted in broken common. Redmond unhooked a wolf-tooth amulet from his belt. This is Chieftain Colleague's personal token. Take it and command the captured orcs. Once the siege begins tomorrow night, you'll trigger total chaos inside the castle and sabotage their defenses. The orc grinned, exposing every single thong. As he took the necklace, the Bloodscar tribe will finish the job. Bloodscar tribe. Redman froze instantly. You're not with Bloodspear. I'm afraid you're going to be disappointed. A chilling voice echoed from the shadows. Ethel appeared like a phantom made of moonlight, her elven longbow fully drawn. The arrow's tip was an inch from Redman's throat. At that exact moment, torches on both sides of the hallway flared up to maximum brightness, revealing me, Algernon, Royce, and a circle of guards. We'd been standing right there the entire time. Redman's face turned as white as fresh snow. His sole remaining hand reached for his sword, only to find an empty scabbard. That's because Grash, the orc in the cell, had already swiped it right through the bars. The prisoner was my orc. The whole thing was a total setup. Redman walked straight into a honeypot trap and handed us hard evidence of his treason, while we watched from just 10 feet away. I wish I could say I felt bad about how easy that was. I don't. Redman's arm trembled violently. rage and desperation burning deep in his eyes. I should have finished you off in that duel, if it weren't for that cursed sword. His gaze locked on a Frostworn at my hip, greed and hatred battling for control of his features. Aldrian stepped out from the shadows, his staff cracking hard against the stone. Redman Blackthorn, in the king's name, I declare you guilty of high treason. Redman's face contorted into something monstrous. He pulled a concealed dirk from his boot, but didn't point it at any of us. He thrust it straight toward his own neck. An elven arrow struck the blade, sending it flying from his grip. Flying sparks lit up his frantic eyes. Aldrian slammed his staff onto the floor once more. You dare plot with orcs against the realm, noble? His voice shook with absolute rage, or what definitely sounded like it. Who's your boss? I stole a glance at him. Hell of a performance. The old secretary knew exactly who sent Redman. This intense interrogation was pure theater. For the official record, what a total actor. I'm taking notes here. I pressed the point of Frostworn against Redman's throat. Who supplied the trebuchets? The knight captain suddenly smirked. A creepy grin. You'll never guess. Then, dark blood spilled from his mouth. His pupils dilated, spreading out like blotches of ink. Damn it. Royce grabbed the guy's jaw. Too late. It's poison. A suicide capsule was hidden somewhere. We completely missed. Redman was dead before he could finish his dramatic parting words. Even dying, this dude stayed committed to the drama. His body collapsed. That unsettling grin etched on his face forever. Grash reached through the cell bars and passed me. The wolf-tooth necklace of the blood spear. Chieftain Colleague's personal signet. The system recognized it right away. Blood spear chieftain's token, special. A dead mole, hard proof of a prince's treason, and a hostile chieftain's own credentials. And now I had all three. Time for a pivot. I spun toward the doorway. Ethel, I require one last favor. Algernon rushed after me. Baron, what's your game plan here? I paused, right at the corner of the stairs. When the enemy hands you a freebie, you use it. The veteran secretary drew himself up. Baron, I gotta head back to the capital stat to pass along word of this wild situation. I gave a nod. Take Redman's corpse and all the proof. Hand it over straight to the king yourself. Algernon looked me dead in the eye. A silent understanding passed between us, far deeper than talk. The king would soon get hard proof that his own boy was supplying weapons to orcs and undermining frontier security. Add that to the blood-steel transaction, and my own proven track record of loyalty, and the second prince's standing just became a whole lot more precarious. His Majesty will realize who truly protects the North. Algernon remarked with dead serious gravity. He took off within the hour, speeding toward the capital, carrying a dead body, a dossier on treason, and plenty of political dirt to rock the royal court. In the meantime, I had a chieftain's personal emblem tucked away in my pocket, a dozen orcs right outside my gate, 3 siege engines locked onto my ramparts, and roughly one day to figure out how to flip all of this to my benefit. The second prince wanted me in the ground. The orc leader wanted my head on a pike. And squeezed right between those 2 hazards lay a perfect opening, one that felt like the craziest high-stakes gamble of my life. Frostworn vibrated, its magical symbols glowing warm by my thigh. Yeah, I muttered back to the blade. I hear you. Same here. Dusk painted the heavens the color of gore. Pretty fitting, considering what I was fixing to burn through. I gazed at my remaining system credits. Like a little kid let loose in a candy shop. Credit card balance, 50,572 dinars. That's including 50,000 for border defense. The king's annual allowance, plus all my saved-up cash. I'd gone from being in the red with loan shark interest to holding more gold than I could even count. Time to shop. 100 Imperial recruits, 50 Imperial infantry, and 50 Imperial archers. Plus 30 Imperial citizen cavalerie. Grand total, 8,500 dinars. Left with 43,072. It's the first time since transmigrating. I've got more money than I can blow. Feels absolutely amazing, I muttered. Soldiers materialized on the plain outside the fortress. Row after row of heavily armored, fully weaponized troops, standing at attention like they'd been there all along. The wall sentries nearly had total heart attacks. Gods above, an old veteran crossed himself devoutly. The Lord has summoned those ancient ghostly allies again. By now, ancient legions spawning out of thin air was pretty much my signature move. No one questioned it. They just prayed and went about their business. Faith-based military logistics, baby. Night fell. 43 horsemen lined up in the courtyard. I was twirling the blood spear, chieftain's wolf-tooth amulet, between my fingers like a poker chip. Here's the game plan. My voice pierced the freezing air. We pose as couriers using the chieftain's token, and ride straight through the outer perimeter lines. Ethel will cause a distraction on the west flank. Night raid mission initiated. Objective: sabotage the trebuchets. 0/3. Midnight. The most bizarre convoy in military history rolled out. 20 Bloodscar orc warriors pushed 3 canvas-covered wagons, escorted by 40 cavalrymen. We looked just like a supply run, since that was the exact role we were playing. Orc camp boundary. A pair of guards warmed their hands by a blaze. Halt! Spears are raised. The flames illuminated our wagons and a score of orc fighters. Grash strode forward, sporting 3 bronze loops in his remaining right ear, looking every bit the genuine orc runner. What's the delay? He barked in Orcish, flashing the wolf fong charm. Chieftain colleague's offering is here. The guard peered closer, his eyes widening. That's the chief's signet. He hurried out of the way. But why at midnight? Grash backhanded him across the jaw. You want the whole camp to know what we're hauling. Metal clanking beneath the tarps. The sentry nodded knowingly. He thought we were moving siege gear. We actually had fire oil beneath the canvas, camouflaged as trebuchet parts. And this grunt just went and invented our alibi for us. Enemy stupidity is your best tactical advantage. In any realm, we passed the outer perimeter. I let out a breath inside my iron helm. Moving deeper into the camp, the stench hit me. Spoiled meat blended with raw pelts. Orc cleanliness is pretty much what you'd reckon, meaning it's totally non-existent. Peering through my visor, I spotted orcs huddled around various fires. Some were honing axes, others were passed out cold in the mud. 1,000 slumbering brutes, completely oblivious that their heavy artillery had maybe 2 minutes left. On this earth, left, I muttered in Orcish. The artillery should be dead center. We steered past a totem constructed from actual bones. And there they stood, 3 massive trebuchets, all standing over 5 meters high, with counterweight bins packed with massive rocks, and launching arms bound in oil-drenched cords. Right beside them sat dozens of earthenware jugs filled with incendiary oil. They literally parked their war machines right next to their own stockpile of ammo, as if that were a brilliant move. Honestly, they basically set up their own total ruin. These orcs were just a single spark away from a self-inflicted disaster, and yet they kept the ignition source right there. Fanning out on watch, I ordered the cavalry to move in. Get your torches ready. Then, right on cue, the western camp erupted into shouting and chaos. Suddenly, a sharp elven whistle cut through the night sky. Attack! Attack! Orc guards were screaming from the west flank. A green glow blossomed across the western horizon. Undoubtedly, some kind of elven magic trick. Ethel, right on schedule. Beautiful, arrogant, and flawlessly punctual Ethel. Now move. Go, riders. Rip away the tarpaulins to find the fuel jars underneath. I grabbed a clay vessel and personally chucked it at the base of the nearest trebuchet. Crash. Sludgy oil soaked deep into the wooden frame. Instantly, 20 torches were hurled all at once. 3 trebuchets transformed into 3 towering pillars of fire, surging high into the night sky. The blazing heat reached the stored oil vessels, triggering chain reactions, one right after another. Boom, boom, boom. It was like the most devastating fireworks display ever. Mission complete. Destroy trebuchets 3/3. XP gained 1,500. The entire encampment completely lost its mind. Orcs were sprinting all over the place, some even turning on one another in the frantic mess. Blazes caught onto the tents. It was absolute chaos. Time to pull back the same way we broke in. The riders assembled, but orcs had already choked our getaway path, attracted by the blasts. Fighters swarmed in from all sides. Break through. I unsheathed Frostsworn. The sword hummed. The first orc clutched his neck and collapsed. Blood turned to ice on the snow before it even cooled. Frostsworn felt freezing tonight. We slammed into the orc wall, like a battering ram of mounts and steel. Yet more green bodies kept rushing us from every angle. A spear grazed an opening in my plate armor, and gashed my left arm, spraying drops of crimson. HP 92/120. Keep the line. I carve an orc out of my way. Frostworn's glyphs flared as it drank blood. The edge was practically throbbing with hunger. Blood drink active. HP 92/95. My blade was mending me by draining orc life force. I was basically a mobile, vampiric weapon system on a horse. Creepy? Yeah. Effective? Hell yes. We were nearly out when a shadow, massive as a fortress, cut off our exit. A 3-meter-tall frost wolf, and straddling it was an orc, decked out entirely in skeletal ornaments. His twin-edged battle axe was larger than anything I'd ever laid eyes on. The steel was carved with a weeping spear. Insignia. Warning. Elite threat detected. Bloodspear Chieftain Kalak. Oh, fantastic. The big boss decided to drop by in person. Human parasite. His tone rumbled like tectonic plates. Crashing together, he raised that massive, door-sized poleaxe. I'll mount your skull on my... A shaft cloaked in silvery light flashed from the gloom and slammed right into the monstrous wolf's left eye. The creature howled and reared back. Kalab was practically thrown from his horse. Ethel saves the day from the canopy yet again. Retreat, I bellowed. Our riders spotted the breach and smashed right through the York line. I caught a quick glimpse of Ethel, bounding through the branches, signaling me to haul ass. Behind us, Kulog's furious roar rattled the trees. Shwa, UNG, I'm going to turn your skull into a goblet. Another warlord, another Skull Cup threat. Is there a newsletter these jerks subscribe to? Skull Cups Monthly. Creative ways to threaten foes. The drawbridge crashed shut behind us, and only then did my left arm start burning, like someone had dumped white-hot coals into the gash. But we had zero time for field dressings. War horns echoed from the ramparts. The entire York army, every last man, was mobilized. We'd wrecked their siege engines, disgraced their chieftain, and torched their camp. They weren't about to wait for daybreak anymore. They were attacking right now. I sprinted up the wall, bleeding heavily with frost's worn grip tight. The sight completely paralyzed me. Thousands of burning torches advanced on the fortress, like a sweeping river of fire. The whole slope of Frostwhisper Mountain was crawling, with a glowing, furious tide of impending death. Man your stations. My command rang out through the darkness. Tonight, we forced the Frostwhisper Peaks to remember the name Shwe. Yuan. Yi. Catapults pivoted as archers drew their bows. 200 fresh troops stood ready on the ramparts. And down the courtyard, I braced my grip on Frostworn. The blood-red runes shone under the moon, radiating gently like a steady pulse. They lost their trebuchets, but I gained 230 new troops. Plus un mythical blade. That was practically humming with excitement. Those orcs wanted a siege, but they just lost their big guns and triggered a seriously hyped defender. With 50,000 dinars and absolutely zero chill. Come get some, Kolak. The Starfaller is open for business. I took my position on the highest wall, acting like a conductor, ready to orchestrate a symphony of violence. The interface brought up the battle stats. Siege defense active. Enemies. 1,200 Bloodspear orcs. My troops. 200 foot soldiers, 100 bowmen, 40 Batavian archers, and 80 Bloodscar warriors. Heavy artillery for incendiary catapults. 200 raw foot soldiers, 100 bowmen, 40 Batavian killing machines, 80 allied orcs, and 4 catapults prepped for arson. All stacked against 1,200 pissed-off greenskins. Let's roll. I set myself up right by the western catapult. My favorite little toy in my happy place. The exact spot where physics meets pyromania. Load up. Troops locked firebombs tightly into the launching cradles. 400 meters. Orc vanguard entering the kill zone. Nailing my eyes on them, I spotted the thickest cluster of green targets and dialed in the targeting calibration by hand. The crank shrieked, and all 4 war machines unleashed at once. For incendiary bombs blazed across the dark sky, like furious meteors triggering 4 blasts. For blossoming explosions of pure lethality. Direct hit. 12 orc combatants neutralized. Experience gained. 120 points. The blazing fire lit up a massive crowd of growling orc faces, and every last one of them was holding 24 throwing spears. Standardized gear with matching weapons. The Blood Spear Tribe. I let out a cold smirk. Well, that name fits perfectly. Second round, lock and load. Aim for the ladders. I cranked the winch, feeling the tension tighten up. Bombs away. Firebombs rained down like divine retribution, landing dead center on 3 siege ladders. The orcs climbing them immediately burst into flames. 2 of those guys, completely covered in fire, just kept pushing forward anyway, right up until the wall archers turned them into blazing pincushions. Job dedication, solidarité. Survival instincts, absolute F-. Direct hit, 18 killed. Massive XP gain. The 183rd volley smashed right behind the orc lines. A massive orange fireball consumed a dozen orc laborers, towing a battering ram. They never even saw it coming. Yet the core vanguard pressed onward. Up front were heavy orcs hauling massive shields. Behind them, 3 rows of javelin throwers, backing them up with a ladder. Assault squads. Talk about a professional setup. These weren't some random raiders. This was a legit army. Watch the javelin throwers. Shields up. A split second later, hundreds of short, chunky javelins soared from the orc battalions. Like a swarm of locusts. These weren't standard spears. They were shorter, way heftier, tipped with jagged edges and trailing blood-soaked cloth banners. The signature weapon of the blood spears. Thud, thud, thud. Javelins pounded the ramparts like a lethal hailstorm. 2 soldiers were impaled straight to the wall. Behind them, blood spilling down the stone crevices. These damn things actually pierce stone barricades. That's no mere javelin. That's a portable ballista masquerading as a stick. Load the grape shot, I roared. Archers, pin down those javelin throwers. Troops switched the siege payloads to nets, stuffed with metal spikes and stone shards. Point-blank crowd control as the catapults roared, blasting out thousands of iron fragments in a wide arc. Just like the world's deadliest sprinkler system, the javelin line got absolutely wrecked, with bodies dropping and screams echoing everywhere. Those Battanian archers, Ethel's beautiful, overpowered, terrifying Battanians really showed their elite status. They deliberately locked onto the orcs, who were prepping their second javelin volley. Every single shaft pierced a throat or an eye socket. Pure surgical accuracy at a maximum rate of fire. One massive orc commander was rallying the third javelin wave. 3 arrows struck him at the same moment, from 3 separate angles. He collapsed like a toppling building, and his whole squad immediately lost it and panicked. Sweet shot. I gave Ethel a quick thumbs up. She acknowledged me with the slightest nod, her silver hair shimmering like liquid. Moonbeams amid the fiery glow. Zero wasted drama, maximum wasted orcs. Right then, the ladders slammed the wall. The first orc face peeked over the parapet, and I cleaved it open with Frostsworn, before he could even blink. As the blade drank the blood, its runes flared, sending a rush of warmth up my arm. Blood drink triggered, giving me plus 3 HP. Looks like my blade just had breakfast. Back to it. Defend the breaches. I whipped around to the men. Dropped firebombs on the ladder bases. I grabbed an incendiary pot myself and chucked it. Straight down. These custom payloads had brittle casings. On impact, they shattered to ignite an instant hellscape. A flawless arc, nailing it. Right at the bottom, the clay vessel burst, and sticky embers raced up the wood like blazing serpents. Half a dozen scaling orcs basically became living torches. You could hear them screaming over the chaotic din of battle. 6 kills, plus 60 XP. I kicked over a barrel of fire oil right next to me. Thick, dark liquid doused the walls, flowing down drainage channels and pooling at the base of the ladders. Tossed a torch down. Boom! Flames shot up 3 meters into the air. The orcs packed together at the bottom got completely swallowed up. Blazing orcs stumbled blindly into their own lines, setting even more of them on fire, which triggered mass panic. It was a total domino effect of flaming chaos. 23 killed. XP earned. 230. More oil. Keep it coming. Soldiers paired up to haul the heavy barrels. Black oil poured down 12 different ladders all at once. A second wave of torches dropped. The entire exterior of my fortress was instantly transformed into a wall of fire. Over 30 ladders were burning simultaneously. Orcs rained down like literal fireworks. The heat was so incredibly intense. I could feel it radiating right at the top of the rampart. I was literally roasting orcs against the side of my own stronghold. The stench was putrid, but man, the results were glorious. Suddenly, the ground shuddered violently beneath my feet. Warning, gate under attack. Durability dropping from 100% down to 85%. A battering ram crew of over 20 orcs was slamming an iron-reinforced tree trunk straight into my front gates. Grab the fire oil, the very last barrel. Right now, the troops wrestled that final vat of oil. Right over the ledge. A dozen flaming arrows rained down on them in perfect unison. The entire ram crew instantly became a massive bonfire. Screaming, running, completely done for. Battering ram neutralized. Plus 150 XP. Finally, at long last, the Orcish horn of retreat echoed through the air. I collapsed against the stone ramparts, totally wiped out. Right below me, the ground was literally carpeted with dead orcs. A few were even still smoking. The air was a nasty blend of singed flesh and gore. That seriously made my stomach churn. Honestly, it smelled like Satan throwing a barbecue in the dead of summer. Siege defense victory. 487 orc warriors slain. Loot. 214 blood spears, superior. 87 orc leather armors. 32 frost wolf pelts, 200 rations of grain. XP earned. 4,870 current level. 5-1-125/000. 487 orcs, nearly half their forces wiped out in a single night. They had no trebuchets to smash my walls, since I torched those babies yesterday. No battering ram either, because boiling oil is truly the gift that keeps on giving. They couldn't out-javelin us, because Britannian archers absolutely eat skirmishers for breakfast. Colleague marched in with 1,200 troops and left with 700, plus a whole lot of regret. My stronghold walls were blackened, reeking of pitch and slaughter. It was the most gorgeous sight I'd ever laid eyes on. The Starfaller held the line once more, and this time around, I didn't even have to go broke to pull it off. Talk about progress. "My lord, you're bleeding," Royce's voice called out from behind me. Glancing down, I went, oh. My entire left arm was drenched in caked gore. The whole sleeve had stained a deep crimson. Totally forgot about that during the fray. Adrenaline makes for an awesome numbing agent, but a pretty garbage. Medical consultant. Just a scratch. I shrugged it off. The system overlay showed my HP sitting at 105 out of 125. Frostwarn's life leech effect had been chugging orc vital fluids all through the clash, keeping my health topped off. My blade was basically a hybrid weapon and health insurance plan rolled into one. Suddenly, Ethel dropped onto the parapet as gracefully as a silver-haired cat, with grime and ash staining her hair. It's the first time she's ever looked less than flawless. Colleague has pulled back for now. She gestured northward, and the radar verified it. Enemy signals are gathering at the ruined North Village, down to roughly half of their starting forces. We managed to wipe out 600 orcs in a single night. Our casualties stand at 89 fallen, and 37 severely injured, Royce noted grimly. As for the wounded, his brow twitched oddly. Every single one is mending at an impossible rate. The medics claim they'll be ready for battle by tomorrow. He lowered his voice, especially the ones you brought forth. Perks of system healing. My troops recover just like video game avatars. Well, because they actually are video game avatars. Injuries that should take weeks to mend resolve in hours. The doctors were baffled while the troops were grateful. And I was fresh out of explanations. Get everyone fed and set up a sleep rotation. Those orcs will return, I thought, opening the construction tab. Fortifications are at 80% integrity, requiring some mending. Cost 200 stone, 100 timber, duration 8 hours. Accept? Accepted. Standing atop the rampart, I watched unseen forces pile rocks and mend fractures. Right before my eyes, the night's sentries from the local militia could only stare open-mouthed. "My lord, your sorcery is absolutely incredible," a soot-stained young grunt murmured. "Totally," I replied, watching reality take another holiday. "Magic, let's just go with that." Morning briefing around the tactical map. The council gathered. They've still got over 600 units. Royce noted, gesturing toward the hostile pins, but lacking proper siege weapons. They won't be staging a real breakthrough anytime soon. Ethel's hair shimmered in the dawn light. Kalmog dispatched runners. He's rallying other clans. My fingers tapped nervously against the table's frame. Plus our backup, the Silver Pine Rangers, have shut down the Frost Whisper passes. Ethel gestured toward a few bottleneck points. We can stall their backup for 3 whole days. What's the deal with the realm's border legion? I slammed my hand down on the table. According to the border defense mandate, the closest outpost has to react within 3 days, whenever a frontier fortress is under attack. Royce scowled heavily. When the blood scars struck, the border legion just sat back and did nothing. Now we're pinned by 12 orcs and still crickets. Ethel gave a soft scoff. It looks like certain. Folks are hoping the orcs will do their dirty work. For them, the second prince. Even way out from the capital, even with his spy dead, he was still pulling the strings. The nearest frontier garrison was barely 2 days out. Yet they hadn't budged. That wasn't a screw-up. That was a cold choice to leave me to die. "My lord." A runner slammed through the doorway. A rider is at the gates, bearing the royal colors. I bolted to my feet and raced to the ramparts. A solitary messenger, carrying the sovereign's banner, yelled out, by decree of the king's special emissary, the 3rd Banner Regiment of the Border Legion has arrived to back up. Snow Eagle Castle. The rider bore the exact insignia as Algernon's royal guards. The king's men, not the second prince's crew. Algernon must have made it back to the capital and presented the proof to the king. The old man moved fast. The fortress gates swung wide. As I rode out alongside my horsemen, the 3rd Banner Regiment's base was already set up. Hundreds of military pavilions lined up in perfect rows, with campfires drifting smoke. Highly professional, totally orderly. The elite infantry of the Border Legions. 3rd Banner Regiment was a beautiful sight. 300 archers, 50 horsemen, man, their morale is sitting at a solid 85, plus another 300 foot soldiers, 150 bowmen, and 100 cavalry. Top-tier troops with crazy high spirits. I legit almost bawled my eyes out. These are actual backup, legitimate pro soldiers. Not some random units conjured from a game interface. And definitely not ancient allies in disguise. We're talking genuine crown forces dispatched by King Baron himself. Their officer offered up a flawless, textbook salute. 3rd Banner Commander Leonid reporting for duty, sir. We marched here at a dead sprint, following classified directives from Special Envoy Algernon. Saluting back, I replied, the Snow Eagle territory is grateful to the crown. But then I checked out the rear of their lines. The bulk of the Border Legion's forces seemed totally missing. Leonid's expression tightened as he lowered his voice to a whisper. The primary force got diverted out west, supposedly to deal with those mountain clans. Our specific detachment only made it here, because we were acting on Algernon's confidential orders. So that means the second prince deliberately stripped away the main border army to leave me hanging. Yet Algernon, who answers straight to the king, covertly scrambled this regiment to help, completely behind the prince's back. This petty royal family drama was literally deciding whether I got to live or die. Gotta love high-stakes politics. No matter, your arrival couldn't be more perfect. I gestured toward the north. The remaining Bloodspear forces are pulling together at North Village. We have to wipe them out before their backups show up. At the War Council, we gathered around the expanded sandbox map, hemmed in by my inner circle and the newly arrived officer. The 3rd Banner's mission is to block the Orcs' escape route. I traced a finger along the Frost Whisper mountain canyons. We can't let them slip back up into those peaks. Ethel leaned in close, her silver hair brushing across the tactical table. The Silver Pine Rangers have already locked down the eastern paths, so those northwestern snowfields belong to us. Lena chimed in right away, sketching a curve across the map. But I spotted a brief flash of anxiety in his eyes. What about the Frost Wolves? I asked point blank. Leonard gave a bitter laugh. My lord, those monsters stand nearly 2 meters at the shoulder. Their thick hide is basically armor, and their claws are like steel blades on the ice. They can easily outrun our war horses. 2-meter-tall wolves, armored hides, and faster than cavalry on frozen ground. The Bloodspear tribe's elite squad was pretty much just a bunch of living tanks with fangs. No wonder they've ruled the Frost Whisper range for this long. I remarked. Precisely. Leonard agreed grimly. We have to crush them completely, if they manage to slip back into the deep mountains. He shook his head. We'll be fighting this exact same war next winter. Then it's settled. I slammed my hand on the sand table. Full army assault. We finished this today. I turned toward Grindin, who was loitering by the wall. Those iron caltrops you brought up earlier, do they actually work in the snow? The dwarf took a heavy swig of ale and wiped his beard. The snow is still thin enough. 3-pronged spikes, completely hidden once strewn about. When a wolf steps on one, he grinned wickedly. It's a real treat to watch. Not good enough. I shifted my gaze to Ethel. Can the elves slow down those frost wolves? She drew an arrow from her quiver, paralyzing venom on the tips, but it requires a direct hit. Then we use both. I ordered. We do both by nightfall. Our strategy was locked in. Royce would head the frontal attack with the castle, garrison, and the 3rd Banner infantry. Leonard's cavalry would secure the flanks to stop any retreats. Ethel's rangers would scatter traps across the snowy plains, honing in specifically on the Frost Wolf Riders. Keep in mind, our true target is Colic. I marked his location on the map in red. Take down the chieftain, and the Bloodspear tribe crumbles. Quest updated. Wipe out the Bloodspear tribe. Objective. Eliminate Chieftain Colic. 0 of 1 bounty. 5,000 XP, 10,000 dinars. 10 grand in dinars, and 5,000 XP just for one orc's head? Kalab wanted my skull for a drinking goblet, and I wanted his head for a quest payout. Let's see who finishes their collection first. Standing on a snowy hill, I breathed out frost clouds so thick they were literally freezing in my beard. The radar map displayed 600 red blips, bunched up in the North Village ruins, just like a dormant hornet's nest. All set, my lord. Royce crunched through the snow behind me. I turned around, and for the very first time since dropping into this world, I looked at my army and felt a genuine surge of pride. Front line, 50. Imperial Legion infantry in mint condition lamellar armor, shimmering in icy blue in the morning light. Kite shields emblazoned with matching Schwain eagles. They looked like a walking wall of steel. Second line, 80. Veteran Imperial infantry outfitted in stunning Legion scale armor, their gazes hard as hammers. Third line, 200 trained foot soldiers in studded leather. Lighter gear, sure, but every single blade arm was steady as a rock. Bring up the rear, 180 archers, counting 40 Bathavian sharpshooters. whose longbows popped against the white snowdrift, like weapons pulled from another dimension, which, technically speaking, they were. Commander Leonard trotted up on his horse, his jaw nearly hitting the floor. Gods above, that gear? Swaying family reserves. I played it cool, totally dismissive. Acting. Like I just had a whole warehouse of top-tier gear collecting dust. Rather than some video game. Spitting out troops from thin air. Issue the commands and run the strategy. The wind rose as icy grapple. Battered the plate mail like mini-war drums. Dawn's first light illuminated the eastern ridge. The charge horn blared, and the Legion foot soldiers pushed forward. The spotter's tone was tight as piano wire. A vibration echoing right through your chest, to grip your very heart. The Border Legion's light infantrymen cover the flanks, looking pretty sloppy by comparison. My system spawned. Forces made actual veterans look like total rookies. North Village materialized through the fog, and right there stood the welcome party. Frost Wolf riders arrayed outside the settlement, pale beasts exhaling mist into the freezing air. Over 50 of those monstrosities, each ridden by an orc with a trio of crimson javelins strapped to his back. Brace for impact. I raised Frostborn high. The heavy infantry reached behind their bucklers to draw lethal, throwing spears from their harnesses, moving together like a single entity with 300 arms. The orcish warhorn shrieked as 50 frost wolves charged. Snow sprayed beneath their paws like crashing white waves. Every predator was a 2-meter killing machine, tearing across the ice at racehorse speeds. 300 meters. The spotter's tone was tight as piano wire. They were eating up the distance, way quicker than anticipated. Those weren't just wolves. They were furry missiles packed with fangs. I gave the word, and 180 bowstrings snapped as one. A torrent of arrows rained down on the assault. The lead wolves collapsed, tossing their riders like ragdolls. Several orcs went flying 15 meters, before face-planting hard into the snow. Yet the majority of the wolves evaded the arrows, as if anticipating their trajectory. Hardly losing momentum, the riding orcs were already drawing back their throwing arms, with muscles bulging like knotted ropes, shields. Every single kite, shield, slammed down into the snow. The defensive formation transformed into a steel turtle. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The initial wave of blood spears is coming right at us. The incoming javelins slammed into the shield wall, sounding like a brutal hailstorm from hell. Metal screeched in agony. A handful of spears pierced right through the gaps, impaling soldiers where they stood. Yet those warriors refused to fall. Shields raised high, bleeding but completely unyielding. System-generated troops never break formation, mostly because they literally lack the ability to. They are hardwired for absolute discipline. These orcs were hurling javelins at a barrier that simply ignored pain. Keep javelins primed. The wolves are closing in at 100 meters. A second volley of spears is heading our way, while the front two ranks anchored their shields. The soldiers behind them stood up in perfect unison. Heavy steel javelins poised to throw. 300 steel spears hurtled across the snowy expanse. Moving at that velocity and from that proximity, the stampeding wolves had absolutely zero time to react. The vanguard of the assault was completely obliterated. One javelin skewered straight through the lead wolf's torso, pinning its rider directly to the earth. Right behind it, a clean double kebab. The second wave of orc spears collided with the shield wall. A thundering clash of metal brought a few more losses. But the line held firm, and openings were plugged instantly. The injured were pulled back. Pure textbook execution. Time for a third javelin volley from my foot soldiers. Over 20 more wolf riders were instantly wiped off the map. Just 2 rounds of heavy javelins had completely torn apart the dreaded frost wolf riders. The survivors, maybe 24 or so, split off into circling skirmish patterns. Classic wolf pack tactics. Hit and run to buy time for the main infantry push. Archers, fire at will. Focus on those javelin throwers. The Britannia marksmen fanned out into a loose skirmish line. Their composite bows outranged everything else on the battlefield, and every single shaft found an orc rider trying to regroup. Then, echoing from the north village, a deep horn sounded. The Bloodspear main force had gathered and reset their ranks. I wiped the orc blood off Frostsworn. The real show starts now. The wind shifted, bringing that lovely, rotting orc camp stench straight to my nose. Appetizing. The system map flagged 500 orc warriors marching our way. In the vanguard, nearly 100 heavy infantry in mismatched iron armor, bearing tower shields and heavy battle axes. In the middle, 300 javelin throwers. At the rear, Kulag's elite guard, commanded by the one-eyed warlord himself. Shield wall up. Archers, get ready. My legion infantry locked shields, while the border regiment's bowmen deployed on both flanks, angling their arrows toward the sky. At 200 meters, I shouted the order. The first arrow storm completely blanketed the advancing orcs. Their heavy infantry blocked with their shields, but dozens of javelin throwers went down. Second volley, more arrows. The orc formation began to splinter. They bellowed and accelerated their charge, ditching all structure and throwing caution to the wind. Just a pure, rage-fueled sprint across the open snow. Then the orcs hit back. A barrage of black javelins surged from their lines. Heads up, the sky went pitch black. With airborne spears, they slammed into the barricade so violently that even the massive kite shields ended up looking like porcupines. A dozen troops bit the dust, impaled straight through armor and shield. Hold the line, plug those openings. My shout cut right through the shrieking. The Legion's infantry proved exactly what real training looks like. Casualties were hauled back in a matter of seconds. Breaches closed instantly. Not a single tear in the formation. These system-born grunts were just machines with human faces. 50 meters out, close enough to spot individual orc fangs. Get javelins ready. 300 steel tips emerged above the shield wall. In perfect sync, they let fly at 50 meters. Heavy spears don't miss their mark. They tore straight through shields, through plate, and right through the orcs, standing in the secondary ranks. The front line of brutal orc brawlers collapsed. Like falling dominoes, their ranks ripped wide open. Shield wall. Push forward. The steel phalanx heavy stepped ahead. An unstoppable force of iron, smashing directly into the orc vanguard. Smash. Steel ground against steel. Battle cries blending with death rattles. As a widening crimson stain dyed the snow, I charged my own retinue straight into the thick of it. Frostborn flashed deep scarlet under the winter sun. Each slash struck meat. Every casualty nourished the edge. The symbols glowed brighter with every orc that bit it. Blood siphon, HP plus 3. Blood siphon, HP plus 3. Blood siphon, HP plus 3. The blade was having a total all-you-can-eat buffet. I just kept slashing, slaying, recovering, and striking again. A nonstop engine of pure slaughter, fueled by orc blood and in-game mechanics. Midst the absolute mayhem, through smoke and screeching, and the wet crunch of steel hitting bone, I spotted a flash of Kalmog's banner in the orc. Rear guard still upright, still holding on. The warm-up round was done. The real deal was heading our way, and Frost Warden was still craving more.